Heavenly Father, today we put on the full armor to protect us against attack. We put on the belt of truth to protect against lies and deception. We put on the breastplate of righteousness to protect our hearts from the temptations. We put the gospel of peace on our feet to walk in your light, peace, and freedom with the Holy Spirit. We rebuke anxious thoughts. We take up your shield of faith for protection to block and destroy all the darts and threats thrown at us by the enemy. We put on the helmet of salvation to cover our minds and thoughts, reminding us that we are children of a mighty King. We are forgiven, set free, saved by the blood of Jesus. We take up the sword of the Spirit, your living word, that has the power to demolish strongholds and is sharper than any double-edged sword. We come to you, Lord, in prayer daily. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
You guys, welcome to The Imagination. I'm your host, Emma, and I know you will all be just as excited as I am to have back on the show for a second time, top-tier MONARCH operator and whistleblower, military veteran, founder of Organized Safety, podcast host and content creator, anti-child abuse advocate, someone who has had a massive and positive impact on my own life and on this project, and the first male mind slave survivor, now of many, to step up to be featured on my podcast. Introducing Gray. Gray was born into a multi-generational occult bloodline family, and from a very young age was groomed and programmed by his family acquaintances, and eventually the government and military to become a top-tier skilled assassin and operator through Project Monarch and other mind control experimentation projects funded by the CIA and our government. After a traumatic event occurred when he was 8, his family relocated to Tennessee, where his abuse continued unbeknownst to him, and it wouldn't be until he was 25 that the two paths of the double life he was living would violently and suddenly collide, revealing every repressed memory from a tortured, painful, and horrific past. As his programming shattered, so did his life. Gray found himself facing time in prison after stage imprisonment charges were dropped on him, and at the same time, his family and loved ones were attacked as collateral damage to his awakening and first attempt at blowing the whistle on what his memories revealed. And now, 10 years later, Gray is back and speaking out for the second time. You don't have to watch Gray's first episode on The Imagination to listen to this episode, but I highly recommend listening to his incredible testimony he did on his first appearance on this podcast, and would also recommend an even deeper dive he has curated for all of us on his new podcast, The Gray Area, that you can find on YouTube and Rumble, along with other platforms that I'll link below in the show notes. This time around, Gray is going to take us down a rabbit hole of epic proportions on a subject that has been a hot-button topic and a consistency in many survivor stories, the Gifted and Talented Education Program, also known as the GATE program, and its affiliations with the government, MKUltra, and other sub-programs. A participant in the GATE program himself, Gray has done extensive research on this topic and was the first person who came to mind to present on these mind control recruitment sub-programs when this topic first started being requested to present on this podcast. There are two major reasons why this topic is important. One I already mentioned, which is the consistencies in so many testimonies that have been featured on this podcast that exist between survivors, but also the importance of these programs is that it still exists today in our modern society, and children are still being targeted, used, and abused by the same methods that existed years ago that have simply evolved but have not disappeared. It is our duty as a society to protect our children at all costs, and that survivors, civilians, parents, and educators learn both sides of the gifted and talented coin, where on one side lies a public cover story of prestige and privilege, while the other hidden side showcases a story much deeper, darker, and more nefarious than any of us can fathom. This information you will find very useful, and I'm so thrilled Gray is here to educate us on the truth about these systems that most of society is oblivious to. Before I finish introducing this week's guest, I wanted to give a reminder that if you are a survivor whistleblower who wants to share your story on this podcast, or who wants to share any information privately with me, you can now email me at imagineabetterworld2020@gmail.com. Please send me a briefing of who you are and how I can support you, whether it's through podcasting or sharing information. I also recently started a Substack that I'd love your support on that you can find at www.emmacatherine.substack.com, where I have been doing weekly recaps and insights on my podcast and using this as a place to publicly journal my journey as an advocate for our children. My Rumble channel is now also up and running, and I'd love your support on that platform as well. All my social, email, and project links will also be linked in the show notes. And as always, I'm so grateful for all the love and support you all show this channel and the amazing guests that are featured. So you guys, without further ado, please help me in welcoming this week's guest of honor, voice for the voiceless, walking miracle, educator and authority on all things Monarch and MK Ultra, and an incredible man who is fearlessly stepping up to organize safety for all the world and for all of our children. The one, the only, Gray. Gray, what's up? Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Oh my God, thank you. Everybody, let's give Emma a round of applause for everything that she's done and is doing for the movement.
It's
we're lucky to have someone like you that's taken an interest and made one of the most important platforms around today for survivors and to spread the word about these issues.
Well, it takes two, you know, it's something that I was passionate about, and I couldn't do it without you guys. I've learned so much from you and from the other guests on the show, and it's an absolute honor to get to do this. And it's definitely the biggest passion that I have in my heart. And I'm so grateful to be given this opportunity to stand alongside all of you that I look up to you and have learned so much from. And it's you guys who make the impact on everybody. You know, this is your show. I'm just recording it and editing it and posting it, but I can't do it without you. So it's a team effort. And I'm super honored to have you back. I've had so many requests for you to be here. You've had a lot going on since we've last came on. And I know that we have an awesome presentation, but I want to promote some of your new stuff. You just got your new channels up, and I'd love for people to go subscribe and follow you, and maybe for you to just give a little update on what you've been up to and let people know where they can find you. And then let's go ahead and start diving into the GATE program.
All right. Well, yeah, so I do want to say my perspective in speaking out, one, is a little more true to myself because I am rough around the edges and involved in a different capacity than a lot of survivors. But also, I feel that this message has to be given from a certain perspective, not one that experienced it unfortunately and, you know, unknowingly in some cases, but one of a common sense perspective from government, where unfortunately this sort of thing is essentially standard and essential for a country to advance and remain a superpower in the world. So I may present things in somewhat of a dark manner sometimes, as well as myself, and I apologize for that. I'm not here to scare survivors or to worry them. I'm here to spread a message of hope, truth, and light. But, you know, some of these issues are already daunting. I have released some of my personal story on my podcast, Gray Area, which can also get pretty dark and is, for some people, will be extremely triggering. So I would definitely warn you for that. And this is just really a cathartic experience of me to get it out. There's a much more organized effort going on, and there is Organized Safety version 2, which will be the public version from what we have been doing in the background for a decade, which is essentially collecting information of perpetrators and locations. And then when we get enough hits on one, blindly corroborating tips, it can be investigated. And if people who report completely anonymously want to leave a contact at that point, if there is corroborating evidence on whatever they disclosed, then they can be contacted, and then blindly corroborating evidence can be brought forward either from a civil lawyer or through the judicial system, of course, because the existing reporting methods have obviously failed us for decades, from allowing things such as the Epstein ring and Sandusky and Penn State and the Nassar and the Olympic trials and the gymnasts. I mean, it's just all ridiculous. And obviously, you know, people need to come together for themselves. We can't sit around and wait on anybody to save us. So getting into the gifted program, again, under the lens of a common sense national security perspective of government, I would like to, I guess, first give a brief history of gifted and talented education in general. So, and most of this is going to be just from the record, from, you know, public information that we're going through. There are some things that are not public information and some that has been scrubbed that I still have, so we'll get into it. But starting with the history,
And Gray, how old were you when you were in these programs?
So I started off in kindergarten. I was in pre-kindergarten, programs already. And then I went to pre-kindergarten programs through the religious denomination that I was involved with. And then instantly in kindergarten through second grade, I was in gifted and talented. But I ended up leaving second grade after a major incident, and then went back to school in fourth grade. And by then I was in a different area, and it was called Encore, Encore. And then I was only at school for a couple of years. I completely left school and went into an umbrella program, because I was very deeply involved with certain things. So, but yeah, as young as you can be, but I just didn't go through the whole thing into high school or anything. So, just going back here through a history, from the classical era to Renaissance, gifted and talented education dates back thousands of years. Plato advocated providing specialized education for intellectually gifted. Let me zoom this up, make sure we can see it here. Plato advocated providing specialized education for intellectually gifted young men and women. And then in China's Tang Dynasty, child prodigies were summoned to the imperial court for specialized education. And you can go more into that, but obviously think about the specialized education and programs that would be through the imperial court of China. Yes, we were talking about bodyguards and assassins and experts and all sorts of different things, including poison. And, we're talking about age-old espionage, counter-espionage, making sure that your people don't get drugged, everything. And then, of course, also just the sciences and advancing in literature and arts. You need the wisest and the brightest next to you when you are, running a country or a dynasty. Throughout the Renaissance, those who exhibited creative talent in art, architecture, and literature were supported by both the government and private patronage. Now, we'll probably make these available, but just for the sake of kind of breezing through this, I mean, there is and this is, just public information from Wikipedia here, but most of it definitely checks out. And just going through different people that were prominent through the ages. And, as you see the dates flashing here, we're through the 1800s into the 1900s, but trying to just crank through this word. This is where things really changed and the modern day gifted programs formed once we got to the Cold War. An unforeseen result of the launch of Sputnik by the Soviet Union, obviously in the moon race, it was the immediate emphasis for education for bright students in the United States. And it settled the question whether federal government should get involved in public education. And that's when the National Defense Education Act was passed by Congress in 1958. Now, just keep in mind for later, this is a very important part, that on paper, the start of this, when it really hit the fan, the excuse, right, that we are justifying is the result of the launch of Sputnik, because technically we were behind at that point in time. And we had to ensure as a country that we had bright students on par with other superpowers in this world, specifically superpowers that we might be warring with. So when the NDEA, the National Defense Education Act, was passed by Congress in 1958, back then it was $1 billion over the course of 4 years. And, to bolster science, math, technology, et cetera, as well as educators immediately pushed to identify students and serve them in schools. Because you have to understand, we have these advanced programs and we need the wisest and the brightest, but that's not for everybody. It takes all different kinds, and also not every student is able to excel to that level. So we didn't only have to provide the means of educating and the programs, we actually had to find the students and test them to ensure they would actually make the cut and be able to take this curriculum and advance. So students chosen for gifted services were given intelligence tests with a strict cutoff, et cetera. And we're going into the Marlin Report, 1972, which presented definitions of what gifted is. But really, this was in 1972 where they're providing the definitions in the Marlin Report. This was already well underway, which you're about to see. But basically, we're talking about children capable of high performance, include those demonstrated achievement and potential ability in any of the following signs, singly or in combination: general intelligence, specific academic aptitude, whether they're good at linguistics, math, whatever it is, identifying exactly what they are good at, creativity and or productive thinking, critical thinking, problem solving skills, leadership ability, self-explanatory, visual and performing arts, obviously acting, you see, the ability to trick someone, for example, right? Act like you're doing something else. I mean, psychomotor ability, and we got spatial perception, everything. So obviously identifying the gifted children and identifying and classifying different types of gifted so we can educate them. Some will be better soldiers, some will be better spies, some will be better scientists, some will be better, physicists. You understand. It takes all types, and we need to make sure that we're watching everything to progress as a people, to develop. And again, this has been going on through time. There's a couple examples here, way above, but that's obviously not all inclusive.
Comment on real quick was just, I don't think people realize how long this has been a societal fascination, is finding these talents in people. And I mean, you mentioned the Renaissance, like that wasn't, just a few years ago. Like this really does span the test of time, the interest in these types of programs.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about the years of Plato, back to even then. So obviously, there's always been specialized education. Now, if you want to get into archaeology and all that, obviously, that's going to get a little bit more murky. But even then, there is, writings about, education. And obviously, you have some people that are working in the fields or whatever, and then you have some people that are getting specialized education. So yeah, obviously, right? Because we wouldn't be able to progress if there wasn't education. It has to be passed down, and there has to be new things developed. So obviously, this has always been something. But again, just the National Defense Education Act, getting to that was passed in 1958, and that was a direct response to Sputnik. On paper, it was a direct response to Sputnik in the Cold War, Soviet Union. All right. So we have that. Now, going from Sputnik, we go to what was made as the National Defense Education Act. So this was what was passed in 1958. Now, we'll get to this in just a moment. I guess the National Defense Education Act passed, and we're talking about gifted and talented programs. Just hitting a few of these real quick because there's hard to get this information online, and I don't really have any graphics to present. But we're talking about all the way back. There was gifted and talented programs called MGM, just like the movie company or whatever. MGM. AIM, that's AIM. TAG, TAG. GATE, GATE. CORE, CORE, ENCORE, ENCORE, and then getting into the adult programs, although there are sub-programs that are also for younger children. You have STEM, STEM, which is specifically in math and sciences, and then there's a few others too, but these are all, gifted and talented programs that are involved with state and federal government. So the National Defense Act, passed in 1958, provided funding to United States education at all levels. And it's to strengthen national defense and to encourage and assist the expansion and improvement of educational programs to meet critical national needs for other purposes. So remember, the very start of this, the reason is for national security, national defense. That is the reason that this is implemented. This isn't, and that's what they put on paper. I'm talking about overall development as a people and this and that. That's not even what they're claiming this to be about. From the very beginning, this is about national defense in direct response to Sputnik from Russia. You understand, and we were in the middle of the Cold War, and you know what else was going around this time. Remember, 1958, this is the time that it's declassified, it's public domain information, that MK Ultra and associated experiments were being perpetrated. That didn't come out till 75, and then the first report on that was 77. So just keep in mind what else is going on around the same time to give context. When National Defense Education Act was formed, MK Ultra was well underway. So, context. Now, we go into, and obviously this is on Wikipedia, you can look up all the different aspects of this, but just hitting a few important points. It was among many science initiatives implemented by Eisenhower, who again, at the end of his presidency, had a speech about warning about the military intelligence industrial complex having too much power and the risks associated with that. A major speech. I highly encourage everybody to look it up. And so you have to understand that, the president in charge literally warned the public majorly, probably the biggest warning that I've seen any president give. So this was implemented by Eisenhower to increase the technological sophistication and power of the United States alongside, for instance, DARPA and NASA. And remember, DARPA was ARPA, Advanced Research Projects Agency, but since a lot of the projects were very aggressive and offensive, they decided to put the word defense in front of it. Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. That literally, ARPA is credited with creating the internet. And then they've made several other platforms and funded many subsidiaries, such as Cubic, who laid the groundwork for what is known now as Call of Duty Modern Warfare, the popular first-person shooter. Things like this. This is what developed. NASA, public information. NASA, we had plenty of Nazi scientists funneled into NASA at the start of that. This is public information. Alongside these, it followed a growing national sense that U.S. scientists were falling behind scientists in the Soviet Union. The early Soviet successes in the space race catalyzed a national sense of unease with Soviet technological advances, especially after the Soviet Union launched the first ever satellite, Sputnik, the previous year. The act authorized funding for 4 years. Remember, it was initially $1 billion. For example, funding increased on 8 program titles from 183 to 222, and over $1 billion, and over $1 billion was contributed. And that was back in 1958. I don't know what the sliding scale is, but $1 billion then is several at least now. I'm not exactly sure, to be honest. I could be wrong even, but it's way more now. It's either way.
I think you're right.
Yeah, shows what I know about money. All right. So, anyways, here's, in the aftermath of McCarthyism, a mandate was inserted that caused a lot of controversy, and this was Title X, Title 10, I believe, that we will reach. But so it was disclaiming everybody that participated in this education program, because keep in mind now, this was at universities nationwide, okay? Now, you remember we had just absorbed all the paperclip scientists from Nazis, Germany, and so on and so forth. And for this National Defense Education Act, for all the places to receive funding, because you think about it, our professors weren't American. America is a melting pot in a relatively new country. So what was required was an affidavit disclaiming belief in overthrow of the United States government. And this requisite loyalty statement stirred concern and protest from American Association of University Protesters. And let's not even get into this, but when they name things like American Association of University Professors, look all these people up. So anyways, over 153 institutions signed. And we'll get back to this in a second, but again, basically, there was a protest against the inclusion of a clause stating that you would not overthrow the U.S. government. A little weird, but what was happening is we don't want our specialized gifted students being taught by certain people that aren't even originally from the United States and growing to learn how evil the United States machine is, and then eventually training everybody and teaching everybody a different ideology, which ripples through generations and making people then dissolve the United States, right? Because this is a very real concern for some legitimate reasons. All right. Now, that was heavily protested by 153 institutions, and it was repealed. That doesn't say that here, but it was repealed. So the NDEA was influenced by the Soviet launch of Sputnik again, Cold War, and then we had a shortage of mathematicians, programmers. We basically get this by now. We had to, it was expanding, we stayed with this. So this was made for national security, and they set up many subsidiaries. In 1959, Disney featured Donald in Mathemagical Land was produced and distributed with NDEA funding. And what people don't know is the people that made this and were involved with Disney were Project Paperclip scientists that came over from Nazi Germany into Disney. Yes, there was quite a bit into Disney. Now, and if you'll notice, before there was supposedly some anti-Nazi propaganda Disney movies, but then there was also propaganda Disney Nazi movies, because again, some of these people were involved with money coming from both sides of the war, and this is public information if you look into it. Now, this is just going into the different titles of the reasons and basically the legislation, what goes into this bill, this National Defense Education Act, and you guys can look into this, but we've pretty much went over this. It's just, for example, it's just identifying them and making classifications and so on and so forth, and just laying out why we need this. This is the controversy, Title X, yes, Title 10. And it was a mandate for all beneficiaries of the act, which means anybody that got funding, right, to complete an affidavit disclaiming belief in the overthrow of the United States government. And some in higher education opposed the disclaimer affidavit, as it came to be called, because they said it attempted to control beliefs, and as such violated academic freedom. Initially, a small number of institutions, Yale, Skull and Bones, Princeton, Barnard. Also, there was others such as, I'm not exactly sure which ones were formed, but it was all the prominent ones, because then eventually it went to 153. So after 4 years of ineffective protest, still the disclaimer requirement was repealed by JFK. So, which is odd, because you think he would, uphold that. But anyways. So that's pretty much it. We have the National Defense Education Act. It was started, some odd clause about overthrowing the government in it, and eventually that part was repealed, and it's set up subsidiaries alongside MK Ultra, alongside DARPA, NASA, and we know people like Disney were involved. Again, this is all linked up to the same group from the same time that we know a lot about. So now you have the NDEA. And that was the Defense Education Act, remember. And that is to provide the education classifications, the curriculum, and the funding. Now, to find the students alongside the National Defense Education Act started Project Talent. Now, remember, the National Defense Education Act was established at the end of 1958. So then in 1960, because keep in mind, the funding was created with the Bill of National Defense Education Act. So then once the funding came, they had to get the people, put them together, and start these different initiatives. It wasn't immediate, it had a snowball. So, a year later, a year and a half later, not even 2 years later, Project Talent started. And Project Talent has been talked about extensively by many people that have came out over time. Project Talent was a national longitudinal study that first surveyed over 440,000 American high school students in the 60s. Okay, it was designed by, and we're going to get to this, American Institutes for Research founder John C. Flanagan. And this is very important. We will come back to him and American Institutes for Research, because we need to see about the people who started these programs. This is what we need to see. It's very important. So it was the first scientifically planned national inventory of human talents. Okay, and basically, so this is talking on paper about them doing it with high school students. But and then there was follow-ups, and, over the past 50 years, researchers have utilized Project Talent data for studies and everything, economics, sociology, psychology, psychometrics, history, health, education, many other fields. And it's a combination of aptitude, cognitive, social psychology, and health measures, and they make it a unique data source for life course studies. And again, they followed up, 1, 5, 11 years, more than that. There's a lot more than just Project Talent. You have to understand this rippled, and this is one little bit that's on paper. Obviously, there's different testing methods, starting as young as can be. That's just the way things work. It would be ridiculous, I think, for people to believe that this, was isolated to high school students, when the gifted programs clearly start way before high school now, and even back then. So,
Ray, can I ask, do you know what the differences are between like Project Talent, GATE? Was there differences in testing, or is this more just age-based where certain programs were called something for different age groups that they were testing for?
So let's put this into context. The National Defense Education Act is merely funding for everything to happen. Okay, and for the programs such as GATE, which is a program with curriculum, like a class. Project Talent is the part that finds the students to put them in the class. So it's merely just testing. So Project Talent, if you're in GATE, you've already been tapped, it would be called. You have been identified through Project Talent or any other tests. So Project Talent on paper was widely spoken for high school students and continuing to do that. But really, in reality, there's other things that are unnamed that we don't know the name of and otherwise, and we couldn't back up with legitimate things that test very young. So if you were tested or identified by a teacher, even if you weren't tested, but they know that they want to put you in gate because you're making hundreds on all the tests, there's actually legislation for that. For example, National Defense Education Act will say any student that consistently tests at 98% curriculum or higher will automatically be then evaluated, so on and so forth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
So Project Talent ties in all the testing, and we're just like MK Ultra, we use that word for a bunch of different things. Project Talent, we use that as an umbrella for all the testing that determines, or the testing and criteria, the framework that determines if someone is going to go into a gifted class at any point. And we just get them, and it's also a full life study of all characteristics about them, so we can learn better about gifted and talented individuals. So Project Talent's about identifying the people. The National Defense Education Act was about funding. And then we get into the various gifted and talented programs that are made. That's the classes, the curriculum. So it's different parts, right? So, regarding Project Talent, Vice President wrote to Flanagan, "It would be difficult to think of a more worthwhile undertaking than your efforts to assure that the best use is made of our nation's most valuable resource." And what is our nation's most valuable resource? It is the children, it's the people, it is the children. And they recognize this. So anyways, we're going into all this, people can look into it. They're studying every single aspect, believe it, they're studying every single aspect of people, including with military. To this day, for example, now you have the Project Talent twin and sibling study. In 2014, a follow-up began with some 5,000 twins. Again, think about twin studies. Where did a lot of these twin studies start? I think a lot of us know the German research on that. So, they're doing all sorts of stuff. And again, it's just an umbrella. In 2009, there was a large-scale follow-up study. And we're looking at the National Institute on Aging. We have to understand everything about how people develop, age, especially the gifted. So Project Talent is a full-scale research, study, and identification of our most valuable resource, people, children. So, and there's all sorts of sub-projects where they're, we're also teaming with colleges. We're always scouting for people. A lot of people know that for intelligence, you can get tapped at college, especially if you're, learn different languages. It's very common. But yeah, so Project Talent is just scouting the talent. National Defense Education Act is making the funding for the courses. Now, before we get into these gifted and talented programs, let's take a look, remembering the dates and remembering the personnel. So we'll come back to National Defense Education Act, but just remember, Project Talent, the person who made Project Talent, John C. Flanagan. John C. Flanagan, the American Institute for Research. He made the American Institute for Research. He was the founder, but he's also the person that made Project Talent. So, looking at John C. Flanagan, what is the deal with him? So, this is going to start to get good, and then it's going to get really bad. So, he was a noted psychologist, most known for developing the critical incident technique, which we'll look into that. Remember, this is the guy that started the thing scouting for people, okay? So he's known for developing the critical incident technique, which identifies and classifies behavior associated with the success or failure of human activity. That's a very nice way to say that, but he was a pioneer of the aviation psychology. During World War II, he was commissioned to head an aviation psychology program, that is a pilot psychology program that developed tests to help identify pilots suitable for combat missions. So this is the guy that was put in charge of scouting talent. the person that was put in charge of scouting combat fighters, which is one of the most strenuous, one of the most stressful, and you need to be the highly qualified, most conditioned to be a fighter pilot. It's very tough business. It's very demanding on the body and the mind. And people wouldn't understand how demanding on the body it is. It's incredibly so. And again, on the mind. So this guy, we get it. He made the critical incident technique, and and then he initiated Project Talent. And then to follow up on the needs by Project Talent, he later developed Plan Program. So the Plan Program for learning in accordance with needs, an entire curriculum from grades 1 through 12, designed to meet the individual needs of all students. So again, you still hear me, Emma?
Yep.
Okay. So again, you were asking about younger kids and all this. Like we said, Project Talent was obviously for starting with the high school student study, right? But then automatically now we're already at Project Plan Program for curriculums grades 1 through 12. Okay, so we're already there. They're hitting them in kindergarten already. Are they searching younger? Of fucking course, we know this. But so already now we're at the National Defense Education Act, funded is at the Cold War, direct response, to the Cold War race during MK Ultra, involving some of the people and some of the organizations, and then the guy that was searching for combat fighter pilots, makes Project Plan and Project Talent to, find kids that are going to be suitable to teach what we need to teach them, So anyways, it's one of the earliest, most comprehensive individualized computer-assisted learning programs. Remember, computer-assisted learning programs. So he was one of the first ones to introduce this, because this is very important, the computer-assisted learning programs. So they're just using cutting-edge methods, obviously, but okay. So anyways, that's John C. Flanagan. Now, we have that pretty clear. Let's see here. Looking at this. As far as federal bills, this isn't entirely accurate, because at one point, I believe it was 50. I have to double check this. This even says no citation needed, but this says 2002, 37 states had laws require them. That's individual state, not federal. So, but then 28 of those require that services must be adequate to meet the educational needs of every gifted student. Okay, there's one federal law with respect to gifted education. That's Jacob K. Javits, Gifted and Talented Education Act of 1988. And there was another one before that and all that, but then that was renewed as a part of the elementary and secondary education. Now, you had the Javits Gifted and Talented Education Act, methods of testing, identification, and programming. So testing, to see if they get in there, it's kind of like an all-in-one with the talent, with Project Talent. You're testing them and identifying them, and then we're programming them with the curriculum. So it was performed at the National Research Center. That's the NRC-GT, National Research Center on the Gifted and Talented, awarding grants to colleges, states, and districts that focus on underrepresented gifted students, et cetera, et cetera. So just remember now, this is done, the federal, which means it has to be done in every state under the federal, National Research Center on Gifted and Talented, NRC-GT. And then they made some more changes from No Child Left Behind. And then after the No Child Left Behind, and if this isn't visible on yours, just let me know, because I sometimes need to zoom up more. Now, just 1 second here. I was going to see, there's one more that was made just recently after the No Child Left Behind Act. Okay. But either way, it's inconsequential. It's about the same thing. It's Every Student Succeeds Act. That's what it is. It's the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is was in 2015. So it's essentially, it replaced the No Child Left Behind, but it didn't eliminate provisions relating to periodic standard tests. So yeah, so the most recent one was the Every Student Succeeds Act, but that is not included in this, so No Child Left Behind was 2002, then Every Child Succeeds is 2015. So And that's the most current, I believe, that we are. But either way, so there are federal ones in place to ensure this is all going on. Jacob Javits, this is still effective, except for that it's kind of incorporated now into the No Child Left Behind and everything else. Bottom line is all this is still in place, and it's only more advanced. It's all in place. Now, what we're going to look for is that this was done through the National Research Center and the Gifted and Talented, the NRCGT. So, and this again, because remember, there's new stuff in here, but some of this is a little bit behind it. Just but it's still all the same thing. But I'm just going to show this was very recent, 1990 to 2013, the NRCGT. Okay. So they successfully competed for a series of grants because, the government doesn't just automatically say, you're going to do this. Different people put proposals and so on and so forth, right? So the National Research Center on Gifted and Talented, which is what the Jacob Javits went with, right? Under the Jacob Javits Gifted and Talented Education Act. This is just basically, they designed curriculum and testing and everything. And, when you start going through here, if you look at these, you get to the usual suspects. You got Stanford that was associated with things. It's all these same institutions that have been involved all the way back to MK Ultra. Exact same institutions are involved. In many cases, there's overlap with personnel. It's a spider web, take a lot of time. It's all public. And it goes into assigning to STEM. And what people have to understand is STEM specifically is an NSA, National Security Agency program. And it's completely backed by that. The National Security Agency actually designs a large element of the curriculum. So that's what people need to understand, that they are approving that. This is actually public information. And we will actually show you this in just a second. So it just goes into an overview of this. Listen to what this is called, the malleable minds. It sounds benign at first, and yes, we want gifted and talented education for our kids, but malleable minds, you don't want the government having your child's malleable minds. That's pretty much what it comes down to. Translating insights from psychology and neuroscience to gifted education. Okay, so this is what you need to understand. Translating insights from psychology and neuroscience to gifted and talented education. That's not good when it's MK Ultra institutions and doctors. That's what you have to understand. And yes, of course, MK Ultra was done a long time ago with the research. Yeah, it progressed, and operational and ongoing programs are in place and being used on people, on the people. So anyways, it just goes into how much they set up STEM. What it doesn't go into here is how much STEM is actually involved with the NSA, but this is also public. And if you go to the NSA site, they literally hire for people to go into the field of gifted and talented education and STEM specifically on the National Security Agency site. Again, another funny and stupid thing is, this is real stupid, but you type in Illuminati backwards on the internet and the NSA comes up.
You're right. You're right.
Who did that?
Explain real quick too about STEM and what that is for people who maybe have never heard it?
Sure. I'll tell you what. Here, let's see. Let me see here. I got to get a better browser on this. This is a unused computer. All right.
You're doing great. This all goes so deep. It's interesting when you take one thing and you just spread out the web and look at what it's connected to and, see where it goes.
Sure. Okay. So this is the National Security Agency website, NSA CSS. I don't know how good you can see that on there.
I can see it. Yeah.
Okay. It's coming up on my screen. It's blurry, but I'm seeing everything, so I can't quite see what's going
really
on.
Clear on mine.
Okay, so NSA's, National Security Agency's K through 12 STEM outreach activities are currently being reevaluated to ensure alignment with their strategic objectives. Requests for STEM outreach activities are not being accepted at this time. Okay, so they're not currently hiring because they are redoing it, but obviously this just goes to show that they have had a program in place for NSA's K through 12 outreach programs promote science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. See? So that's what STEM is. and world language education, blah, 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 blah. So yes, so NSA, and also you can actually go in here, now a lot of it's scrubbed. I have a database that I can get to provide curriculum from the 90s, but I have that with other safe information that's very hard and risky to access if I continuously do so. So, at some point I will get it whenever I go to get to other things, but I do have the actual full curriculum docket for the Gifted and Talented program in the Northeast for the early to mid 90s, which is NSA curriculum. And a lot of it's very benign, such as math is being taught with coins and dollars, being taught to them with money, so they understand money and math at the same time, right? While I'm over here not understanding what a billion in 1958 is to this day. I must have missed that lesson. But anyways, so it's clear that already this program is deeply involved with national security, was created for national security, with doctors, with psychologists, not education doctorates, but psychologists that, for example, sourced combat fighter pilots in World War II, at every university. So that's, I don't know how much more I can exactly say about STEM. Is there anything else?
Scroll down just to the bottom of that last paragraph right there. Yes. I just wanted to read, to cultivate the next generation of expert fields critical to our nation's future. So, it really does go along with everything, just for people who are on a platform that they can't read it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because, we're going into literally everything in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We're talking about nuclear physics. We're talking about space programs. We're talking about, just everything. Everything and anything. For example, people might know that we were for a while leading in semiconductors in a long time, and we had Semitech and everything, and that dissolved. And now a lot of the semiconductor industry is being made outside of the U.S. And there was a shortage of chips and miniature technologies and stuff like this. And obviously we have the nanoscale complex and everything still in Albany, and we have other things, a major one in Texas. But and I'm not even sure up to date with like everything in Silicon Valley and everything. But I don't think the manufacturing plants are in Silicon Valley as much as the design. But anyway, yeah, so it's obviously this is all national security, et cetera, et cetera. And if you just start looking to, women in STEM, NSA's women in STEM, like if you just, it's all, and this is June 28th, 2001. So like, if you just look up, it's on their website. This is all public information. So like, I know it's very distressing for people. And if I may, just for a second. And so part of the reason, too, that I want to speak out and kind of give this perspective on it, because we're about to get to the part, yeah, people go through horrible things, and it's really messed up. But looking at it through the lens of a country, it's pretty obvious why this is necessary. And unfortunately, and I forgive me if I speak out of pocket here, because I'm going to make a little assumptions. I'm in America, and I've seen American life and not too much of other lives. I haven't even seen too much of the American life, to be honest, but not too much of other lives. But when you look at America, and which is about to link up in UK, for example, and then look at America, UK, New Zealand, Australia, okay, and Canada. Now look at Russia and China. Do you understand the culture and the discipline that goes into some of these kids as they're being raised? We have to have some things in place, and I'm not trying to fight with other countries, because I'll be honest, I don't know much about who's running these other countries, but I know about who's running this country, unfortunately, and they're corrupt and it's bad, So, I'm not trying to go to war with anybody else, but I'm just saying from a people perspective, we need to make sure, and they have their flaws too, but like, they're doing this, you know what I'm saying? They're doing this, believe me. It's, in part a direct response. But the thing is, the problem, one, is choosing development over any means in humanity and being able to use any method, which again is what these people that designed this program have a track record for in MK Ultra and other things. They'll use any means necessary under the justification of a response to war or threat of war, in order to use the most cruel, inhumane methods, and even play God in many aspects for development. The same mindset was used in World War II by Nazi Germany. They were trying to advance development, including creating a master race. Now, obviously, do we want to develop as a people and become better? Yes, but we need to do this cohesively. We need to do this with a symbiotic relationship between humanity, spirituality, technology, and real defense. And not the best defense is a good offense. Defense. I mean, it's just crazy. So anyways, unfortunately, like if you look at this, like it's kind of common sense. Well, of course they're finding people. Of course they got special programs they put them into and all this. And some people might not want to do it because our culture here in America, let's be honest, our kids are a little bit more likely to say, no, fuck you, dad. Fuck you, mom. No, I'm playing my video game. Leave me alone. Will you make, make me some fucking sandwich. I don't fucking know. But you know how some of these spoiled brats are. I'll be honest. It's bad, especially now. Look at in Russia, that shit's not flying. In China, that shit's not flying. You understand? So like, we're going to have a lot of people that say no here. And guess what? You know what they get? They get behavioral modification because we need you in this program. You're capable to do this, and we need you for national security to ensure our continuance, our survival. So, like, it's a messed up area. I'd like to say a gray area, but I mean, it's one of those things when you get into the national security perspective and you just get into the like country national defense perspective. Some of it's justifiable, but at the end of the day, people running this and using people and everything like this are corrupt. So there's absolutely none of it's legitimate. We need to be helping people develop. We don't need to use any inhumane method. We need to make sure things are safe because we're trying to get there faster, but bad things happen in the long run when there's a little bit of testing without regard with humanity. And we're talking about from developmental education and psychology to medical issues. And we have a long track record of releasing things and things going bad and recalls and, this and that across everything, even with food. I mean, just with everything. We're rushing, we're trying to go, bad things happen, And bad things do happen because here we are being ran by corrupt organizations and people that would be gifted and talented and could be using their talents to benefit humanity are used in nefarious ways at their own expense and the expense of the people. It's not, this is not a national defense. This is not national security at all. And then there were people, again, so now I guess I see I'm not even I was actually I thought I was showing something, but I see now that I was not showing anything. Okay, so anyways, where do people get funded from here or funneled from here? I'll show you where I got funneled. There's 15 major agencies that work together for national response to about everything. And we need the leading scientists in all of them. And all of them, Department of Labor, Department of Interior, the Environmental Protection Agency, USDA, Department of Justice, Department of Defense, the United States Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Energy, Department of Health and Human Services, State Department, Department of Commerce. Then we have Coast Guard, everything like that. But you understand, like all of those, not Coast Guard involves some military people and, State Department's going to have some operatives and stuff like that. Of course, Homeland Security. But a lot of these we're needing scientists that are cutting edge. That's what the majority of these associations, we need scientists. We need science, technology, engineering, mathematics. You understand? So, I mean, it makes sense. This is, we need people. We do. But we, need to do this right and need to make sure that we don't have corrupt leaders, which I guess isn't exclusive to this, isn't a problem exclusive to this. But so that pretty much covers the National Defense Education Act and Project Talent. Okay, now remember, National Defense Education Act, because we're going to branch over here, was in 1958. In a direct response, we all know, to Sputnik. This is the thing. In direct response to Soviet Union and Sputnik, okay? 1958. So, now let's look at the godfather behind all of this. John Curtis Gowen. He was a psychologist who studied the development of creative capabilities in children and gifted populations. entered Harvard at 17, military academy, UCLA, educational psychology. He became interested in gifted children after Sputnik. Okay? So just keep in mind, because he's not on the paper. He's not on the paper, is he? But 1956 launch of Sputnik, this is when Dr. Gowan became interested and formed the National Association for Gifted Children. Now, what is the National Association for Gifted Children? It's also called Performance Plus in the UK. It's essentially the same thing, the counterpart. You know, the UK has Tavistock and so on and so forth, and mirrored a lot of our research and things like that, and we cooperate with them. There's a strong relation and connection. So this is the exact same thing. NDEA was made in a direct response to Sputnik. Dr. Gowan became interested after Sputnik, okay? So that's already on paper a pretty strong correlation, but we're about to go exponentially. He wrote over 100 articles and 14 books on gifted children, teacher evaluation, child development, and creativity. He created a program to train campus counselors. And it's just, you know, okay. Besides his work in educational psychology and related to gifted children, he also had an interest in psychic or psychedelic phenomena as it relates to human creativity. Okay, and his work's all inspired by Aldous Huxley, Carl Jung. Now, you know, people that know this knows it gets a little metaphysical, a little bit occult, you know, these people, which psyche does. And you look at a lot of these ancient writings and stuff like that, or if you study, you know, the Tree of Life, you know, if you study the ancient texts, a lot of these artwork and these different things were explaining how they understand psychology and the subconscious and the layers of the mind and so on and so forth. This has been passed down from generations to generations and talked about, and something that, you know, there's a lot of discussion about, you know, a lot of uncertainty, but there's definitely something to a lot of these ancient writings and so on and so forth. But all that aside, we don't need any of that. I'm just mentioning it because psychic and psychedelic pops up. So anyways, this guy's getting involved. And keep in mind, it's so important to understand that this guy, he's interested in the psychic research and the psychedelic, but also that he's creating a program to train campus counselors, sorry. And what you have to understand is these people aren't just about training the students. They're about creating the whole environment. Now, I did miss one thing that I need to go back to rather quickly before we go back to him, sorry. But if remember, Flanagan, who we brought up, made Project Talent. Sorry, I missed this, and we need to hit this real quick before we go back to the Godfather, who is Gowan. So we got Flanagan here. I'm just going to call him Flanagan from now on. He started the critical incident technique, okay? So the critical incident technique, it's a set of procedures. This is the guy that started Talent, and which ended up being Talent Plan Project, which, you know, K through 12, right? So the critical incident technique, remember, this is the same guy that identified combat fighter pilots, right, to go into combat fighter pilots for World War II or after World War II. So the CIT is a flexible method, is a set of procedures for collecting direct observations of human behavior in such ways to facilitate their potential usefulness in solving practical problems and developing broad psychological principles. So it was carried out as a part of the aviation psychology program for the war. You know, it's systems training, accident investigation. It's an integral part of large-scale task analysis. So what this is basically making sure that not only between Flanagan's work, this guy, and the Godfather Gowan's work, training campus counselors, they're also making sure that they understand this whole procedure, from oversight, from what teachers would do if they would notice something weird or off, how it will be reported, how they are to train, how they are to report, how accident investigations take place, how the system design should be. And they control every aspect of this. So if there is an incident and something gets reported or someone feels funny, they control the flow of information and keep a lid on it. Just as the Catholic Church, for example, would handle abuse investigations internally and design that system, they also have their system built on CIT. You know, and of course they've had things going on and everything like that, but this all ties in together. It's the same formulation of designing basically an internal response to fully encompass the situation so you can make sure that it's continuing ongoing and you can put a lid on any of the fallout if anything bad pops up. So it's just, you got to understand the people making the critical incident techniques to make sure you just really have your, arms wrapped around a situation. It could also be used for good, but it also fully understands the dynamics. So you have the people scouting combat fighter pilots, critical incident technique, and the people that are fucking looking at psychic and psychedelic psychology that are running these programs. And this guy also started the American Institute for Research, AIR. And AIR, it did so much, Project Talent, Critical Incident Technique. It did so much with the Army and stuff like this. It's just they're these guys that are running our education. It's all from the military, all from military and military intelligence. Can't stress that enough, and for national security. Okay, so back to Gowan. Again, Gowan got interested at the same time the National Defense Education Act was started because of Sputnik. He got interested because of Sputnik. He was interested in development psychology. He was the godfather of all this, put out so much information, and he started the National Association. He started the National Association for Gifted Children, which is also Performance Plus in the UK. So, looking more about Gowan, and we're going to link this all up now and get to the good part. So this was a recent thing about Kathy Goff. So he was a pioneer in gifted and creative education. His developmental stage theory provided the principles to guide the development of gifted youth. His work in gifted and creative education led to investigating the psychic phenomena and human creativity as it relates to extraordinary development in mystical states of consciousness. And this all ties in with Stargate, with Grill Flame, with all of that research, which was also, again, being done by Russia and other places. But you have to understand, for national security, and we know these programs were declassified in Stargate and so on and so forth, okay? So we absolutely know that, they were doing this. Now, do we know that they were doing this on children? Well, give me a second. Now, he started at 17 when he entered Harvard. He got his master's degree in mathematics, UCLA, military. He became interested with the Russia's Law Sputnik and the National Defense Education Act. And then he served as an editor of the Gifted Child Quarterly. And we're about to show you some excerpts of the Gifted Child Quarterly as well. Now, and just a look at the National Association for Gifted Children. We could dig in forever through here, but this is what he started, and then also Performance Plus in the UK. So it's, it's the same thing. It's just basically National Association for Gifted Children. This kind of oversees a lot of the other stuff. It's, it's a lot to get into. So but we already kind of know. I'm going to be saying the same thing. Here's what it is. So if you want to look, it's all saying that, it's all the same stuff. So it's got a pretty face on it, right? It's got a pretty face on it.
How happy all these people are.
Yes, but we know what appearances can be deceiving. I mean, it's public relations 101. Show them something nice, continue to say nice things, flood them with that, deny, do whatever the fuck you need to behind the scenes. Keep a lid on it. That's it. And guess how we keep a lid on it? CIT, critical investigative technique. We already know what's going to happen, and we've already created roadblocks and parameters. We know the flow chart of the information, and we control every single personnel. Whenever there is a full stop, wherever the buck stops, that's our guy. That's where we have our guy. You understand? We can completely control the flow of reporting and everything else. That's it, and now it's fully encompassed. So we know that Gowan Basically, it was the godfather. Now, he's not on the paper for the National Defense Education Act, but he started the National, Association of Gifted Children, Performance Plus in the UK, and he is listed. Once you start getting here to the developmental chart for these gifted programs, which I don't know that this is public or not. Can you see this here?
Sorry,
so Gowan is credited on a lot of it. What this is the Erickson Paget Gowan periodic developmental stage chart. We can't even get into. I can't even pronounce it. Piaget. He's involved a lot. That was the one that Gowan based a lot of his research off of, and he didn't take credit for it as much. On some that he made by himself, it's just Gowan, but you'll see Piaget Gowan. That's because it was mostly his, I guess. I'm not exactly sure, and I haven't looked into Piaget too much, so I'm not going to really make any comments on him because I don't, I'm not familiar. But anyways, you see the developmental levels are starting with infant. And then, go into the developmental levels and, basically the models that are being used, Erickson and Piaget, trust versus mistrust, sensor motor versus chaos. You have to understand what this is right here when it's talking about. This is talking about positive disintegration. Children are born without their brain fully integrated. And a lot of dissociative identity disorder, which is what's required for a lot of these behavioral modification programs so many are privy to, require things such as confusion between trust and mistrust, and your sensor motor and chaos for your sensory motor system. And when they're overstimulated, it can cause disintegration. Which is basically not allowing parts of you to integrate, and then so on and so forth, even further reinforcing the walls between the parts of your brain, physiologically, to where then the brain will not integrate. And this is what was researched and what is done in Auschwitz and MK Ultra, and they found how to stop integration when you're young, so that way you can control the development. So they're going into from infant, youth to adult, different kind of theories and et cetera and so forth, and just models of growth and development and teachings and curriculum. And there's a whole developmental stage chart of different things planning for these programs. And again, there's follow-ups. Some of these programs are designed even into adulthood. You think they want someone to go through this for the first 4, 8, or 12 years of their life and then bow out as an adult? No, you went through the program and there's been massive resources invested in you. You're locked in and we want you. We want you. And we need you for national security, which is why we won't allow you to say no by way of behavioral modification. And does that happen to everybody? Of course not. But at different levels, will they at least be pressured? Of course. Every single person in the world is pressured to pay your taxes at the end of the year, to do this, to do that. Yeah, you're getting weight put on you. So there is some sort of influence. Now, is it direct brainwashing? Not always. But in these programs, unfortunately, people that are put all the way through it, the vast majority of them have been through direct brainwashing methods in some way, shape, or form. So now, I'm not sure what this is loading here. Okay, this is getting into some of his research. So what we'll see is we'll look real quick at just a couple of these. Remember, Gowan was the editor for the Gifted Child Quarterly. Okay? The Gifted Child Quarterly, just a couple excerpts. The hypnotizability of children. Okay? And what else do we got? Hypnosis, LSD, and addiction. But guess what? They already did one with hypnosis in children. So really, what the fuck, So, and people again are they really going to be doing these extreme techniques to children and all this? Well, just wait, because we're about to see the rest of the information from Gowan and then dive in a little bit deeper. But one thing that people do need to see is this.
Segment 3 this evening is titled The Children and the CIA. We've learned a lot of unknown activities of the CIA in years past.
This came out 77.
The least. Tonight we'll learn of the agency's interest in children. Paul Altmeyer of our investigative unit has assembled these facts.
These are home movies taken in the 1950s at a European camp of the Children's International Summer Village. A program
International Summer Village. So we'll just remember this, and this was in what, the late 50s, you know, so this was right around the same time again as all this going on, and they're investigating.
designed to bring together children from around the world for a better understanding of one another. NBC News has learned that the CIA was studying these youngsters, some as young as 11, as possible future recruits.
Possible future recruits, which we already know for a fact that Project Talent and National Defense Act was designed to do, to funnel them to things like STEM and the NSA and the different companies. This is already known.
These took place at summer camps in Hennefest, Norway and Vienna, Austria in 1959 and 1960. According to CIA documents,
1959 and 1960, the National Defense Education Act was already established.
we have examined, this was Sub-Project 103 of the agency's top-secret MK Ultra
Again, this timeline is established. This is all happening simultaneously.
program. San Antonio, Texas. NBC News has also learned that the CIA paid for a study of adolescence here and in two other Texas cities, Austin and El Paso, in 1958 and 1959. It was a study of how youngsters behave without adult supervision.
Now, was it a study of how youngsters behave without adult supervision? Or was that the study on paper in order to separate them from adults so they could do what they needed to do? Of course it was. I mean, with what we know as public record, with everything that's came up and been brought before Congress, with all the hearings and everything, and nothing has ever been done, do you really think that they just wanted to see how people are away from their parents? Or do you think that that was pretext to separate them from their parents as a start of these brainwashing programs? And it wasn't just a start, there's other things at smaller scale, but this was literally when they scaled up from doing this in compartmentalized wartime operations directly under MK Ultra doctors, directly under the military's eye, and G.H. Esterbrooks, and, so on and so forth, to the part where now we are going to layer this off and teach people to do this, most unwitting, but there's so many different parts that this is done in. They're making sure children get abused, and they already have dissociation. Then they get selected, and then no one at the school, almost no one, even has to be nefarious. They literally just think they're doing good. But then some of this technology affects different ways, and so on and so forth. It's not like everybody involved with this is a bad person. I would venture to say probably most people aren't. But this is a very strategically set up thing for national security, and the dirt is done in private, and it's done to appear as benign as possible. I mean, this is what it is.
This study, MK Ultra Sub-Project 102, refers to data being collected on 462 subjects in 7 secondary schools. No child is identified by name.
Okay, so one more time.
MK Ultra Sub-Project 102 refers to data being collected on 462 subjects
462 at 7 schools.
Secondary schools.
At 7 secondary schools. Okay. And obviously that's the little glimpse of what's came through. We all know that this is going on a lot bigger field. But anyways, so obviously they're researching this about children. The same time the National Defense Education Act had just happened. Project Talent, the people involved were scouting in World War II for combat fighter pilots, created basically the whole investigation sphere, control mechanism that's even used in many aspects, the same sort of psychology and programs used by churches and religious institutions that keep investigations internal. And then, and then the godfather of this is, looking into hypnotizability of children, LSD, and, psychic, all this phenomena. Okay, so that's all been established. So are they going to look into children? Is this national security? Obviously. I mean, I already feel like if you look at this realistically, it's obvious what's going on. I don't understand how it couldn't even be for people at this point. But now it's going to get real bad. Okay, so we already saw the excerpts from Gifted Child Quarterly, who again Gowan was the editor for. But now
are a really easy way for the generational families also to put their children on these paths, without anybody knowing.
Say that one more time.
These programs are really good too for these generational families who, already know that their children are gifted, to set them on the path to what they're going to be doing too through these institutions.
Now, yes, absolutely. But I will say the one major difference is where the people that are kind of what did you call them? I'm going to say kind of richer, upper echelon. What did you call the people to put there?
Yeah, like the generational families, the generational like satanic families.
Sure. So now there's different types of those
families. Let's say that.
Now the poor ones, essentially, a lot of people send kids to poor families or route them and obscure the bloodline they're from. And you might say, why? That makes absolutely no sense. One, to protect their continuance of their bloodline. Two, is because they know that if they raise a weak child with easy, rich circumstances, they will not become what they need to carry on the dynasty, and they will become weak. So a lot of these rich people will actually put their children through horrible things and not give a fuck, and not show them attention, and send them to specialty schools where they'll learn skills, where they get abused at notorious private institutions. So what will happen is, you have the rich people that basically send their kids to private learning, and then, these Ivy League places where these are going on, Yale, and they'll enter in these things. But then you have some of these families actually are hiding their children in middle or poor class, and that's easy to control them and keep them, and then they'll be grateful for the opportunity and almost never say no, right? And then they'll be getting funded through the NDEA. So the only difference really is that, one's doing it through the funding from the NDEA, and then the other's doing it out of their pocket through private institutions. But it's still all under the same umbrella, yeah. But it's just an important note I wanted to make, that not all generational families are necessarily elite or wealthy, and there's also a lot of intermingling and a lot of them hiding in the middle class and lower class and so on and so forth. So, there's a lot of that.
Absolutely.
So back to Gowan. This is now where it's getting serious. John Curtis Gowan. Remember, this was the guy chartered the National Association of Gifted Children, got interested right when Sputnik took over, right when Sputnik got launched, just like when the NDEA came, was the editor of Gifted Quarterly, and interested in psychic and psychedelic development. John Curtis Gowan, an early authority on gifted children and a member of the founding facility at California State University Northridge, MGM, Curtis Gowan, who spent decades researching the gifted and authored over 100 papers and was the president of NAGC, National Association of Gifted Children, actually called positive disintegration developmental forcing. Positive disintegration. Positive disintegration. For example, when they're an infant and they're put through certain things of trust, mistrust, and sensory motor chaos, and traumatized. For example, when they are sexually abused. Positive disintegration, developmental forcing. Now, keep this in mind. The gifted and the creative. A 50-year perspective. So this goes into the 50-year perspective this gifting created. Long story short, there was a major turning point in 1977. So, because I'm trying to keep this within time here, and this is a monumental 291-page thing that I don't think I'm going to be able to quite extract the relevant information of. So we'll probably make all this available to everybody anyways. But in 1977, there was a massive, basically outsourcing of all this, right? In 1977. And the important thing to realize, when a lot of these gifted programs were sent off and outsourced and basically further subsidized in 1977, it's important to realize other things that happened in 1977, namely the joint hearing before the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence and Subcommittee of Health and Scientific Research on Project MK the behavioral modification. In 77, once the report came out, because the whole situation blew in 75, a lot of this gifted and talented education programs, curriculum, and so on and so forth were further subsidized right when the MK stuff really blew. So, It's just if you're looking at that, and again, it outlines a lot of it actually in that paper that I had just showed, but it's just a 291 page. But anyways, so it's literally matching up. The same start of this was started, you know, right when MK Ultra was going and they were scouting children, the CIA was scouting children, they're doing behavioral modification techniques. You know, at that same time, all the NDEA was forming Project Talent, people, same psychologists, NASA is involved, Disney's involved, DARPA's involved, everybody that's already on the record, public information involved. Obviously, this is for national defense. We know, obviously, this is forming towards STEM and the National Security Agency and all these other major 15, you know, governmental federal organizations and so on and so forth. And again, you know, once it gets to 77 and MK Ultra really blows, all of a sudden, you know, of course, some had been happening already, but in 77, there was a major push. And that was like when they were launched already, like at the beginning, before MK Ultra. Remember, MK Ultra blew in 75, and then the hearing was in 77. But in between that time, they rushed everything into further subsidies. So if people started looking more, it was plausible deniability. Say, no, we stopped that. We stopped that. See, it shut down. How are you going to say we didn't stop it? Oh, because you think that's kind of the same? Okay, we'll do a report and check it out. Okay, let us do a report. Oh, halt, motherfucker. You can't. Guess what? You know what I'm saying? And that's when, you know, just everything. It got brushed under the rug. Because you try to do something, you know, if they don't outright stop you, they're just going to move it. They're just going to, you know, play, what's the game you call, you know, whatever it is. You know, here, this happens in the news. By the way, that company shut down and now this started over here. By the time you find that, they'll move it again or they'll throw your ass in prison. You know, I mean, yeah, so exactly. So it's just, you know, they're constantly, you know, playing games. It's hide and seek, but nobody's really getting anywhere because the oversight people for when you do catch them are also compromised. So, you know, what do you do? Okay, so now, we've established now, okay, this is at the very end of Gowan, and this is, so we saw that Gowan was into positive disintegration, correct? Now, real quick, just also to show, this is a document from preschool programs, gifted and talented preschool programs. Oh, okay, so this is Denver, Colorado, gifted and talented preschool programs, okay? So, and this goes to, you know, early childhood education, exceptional childhood education, blah, blah, blah. This is from the 60s, I think, but described 4 preschool programs for gifted children at the preschool level and discussed the components of a good preschool program for the gifted and talented. Okay, now let me tell you, because we went into things such as McMartin, okay, and other sort of things, you know, Presido, and just all this. So, like, I mean, it's a fucking problem. You know, I can't even get into the Matheson School. You start looking into all this, and trust me, you're gonna, it's ugly as fuck. And what's happening is, guess what? They're already processing children majorly through these programs, starting in preschool. And guess what? They probably already made sure they were generationally abused and had pre-existing dissociation, such as was found to be necessary in the MK Ultra research. So anyways, you know, this is another long document. This is 104 pages and it outlines, you know, the program. And again, this is on paper what's outlined. You know, everything's usually a lot worse. This isn't even loading for whatever reason because this is on my computer saved. But okay.
Well, there it goes.
See, I'm actually, just so everybody knows at home, I gotta take operational security seriously. And the computer that I have on the internet that I'm talking to you guys on is not the computer that I'm showing you things from. The computer I'm showing you things from is not connected to the internet in any way, shape, or form. It is connected to a camera, connected to a Mini Pro, ATEM Mini Pro ISO, and then video is being sent to TV, and then the TV is linked through the webcam port to the computer with internet. So unless the internet's going to transfer through an HDMI, through an SDI, and through multiple other cables, which it never could, isn't impossible, that nobody can get to this. So it's not actually, you see what I'm saying? I'm not actually able to pull up some stuff. All right. Unless if it's, you know, been archived in here. Okay, so I can pull one from the computer on the internet, just so you know, but it's not where I have these files. Okay, so let's see. Where are we going to go here? Okay, now we get to look at his writings real quick, and we're wrapping him up. Ooh, this is where it gets serious. Okay, so we're talking about John Curtis Gowan. Here we go. Let's see what this one is. Is this it? Is this the first one? Nope, that's book 3. Here.
Thank you so much too for putting all this together. I can tell how much effort you put into this and just how many resources you have.
No problem. I appreciate everybody. Okay, this is book 3. This is book 1. Professor John Curtis Gowan, Taxonomy of Consciousness. He wrote many books. Now, they really delve into everything from the conscious ego, the partixic modes, that kind of classify different tree of life nodules and very deep occult aspects. Is literally explaining what many would call black magic and things like this, which go through what you call occult path working, where you put yourself through a series of trials and tribulations to develop. We're talking about Aleister Crowley's AASS cult, right? That would use similar methods. And this is the type of stuff that this guy's studying. So, it therefore goes from a state of complete cognitive chaos, such as schizophrenia or a disintegrated child, through other types of dissociation in trance, which are regarded as prototaxic models, to a middle ground of parataxic mode, which involves some of the amelioration of the relationship with the conscious ego through successive stages of archetype, dreams, ritual, myth, and art, finally to the syntaxic mode, in which there is some cognitive control involving creativity, biofeedback, and meditation, among others. All this is saying right here, this is explaining in a scientific way, putting yourself through occult path working. This is literally what that is. Putting yourself through the ritual. I mean, it says that. And it's just putting yourself through a series of stimulars, like ritual, myth, dreams, art. Like, we're literally talking about doing ceremonies and rituals for development. This is literally what this guy studied. Such an analysis, continuation of the ideas presented in the development of the psychedelic individual. Blah, 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 blah. Paulian, Faustian, Promethean. He's into all the ancient stuff, called the Prometheus, the Pythagorean, death cult, all of this. He was involved in all these. So it goes into, like, literally, this is just all, and a lot of this is serious development stuff, but this is all based on occult stuff. The mental health potentiality and full cognition, the mental illness potential, less than full cognition is reinforced. Less than full symbolic cognition of the experience results at best in parataxic and presental images of art and archetype, which is the organism's way of working off the excess energy unused in full cognition, and at worst in neurosis. I understand this is, and at worst neurosis and psychosomatic externalization of the misspent energy onto the psyche, body, and immediate environment. Psychosomatic externalization of misspent energy of the psyche, body, and immediate environment. We're talking about body memories of pain from ritual abuse. I mean, literally, this guy explains everything in scientific, somewhat benign terms, unless you understand it. But this is what this guy was literally, researching. I mean, and here we go right here. Book 1. Here's just a look at 3 books that he wrote. A psychological analysis of the relationship between the individual ego and the numinous element in 3 modes: prototaxic, parataxic, and syntaxic. And the thing about this is, I don't have diagrams, but this is actually talking about the 3 layers of the tree of life, all the way to the Malkuth, the Sephiroth. I'm not sure how many people know about what the tree of life is. But it's essentially like it's got the dots, and it's got 10 dots, and then they're intercrossed with connections. It's used in a lot of occult stuff. But we don't even need to pull that up. Either way, it's literally, he's just explaining occult, occult stuff, like even dark occult stuff, but also just blatantly occult, which could kind of go either way. He's explaining it basically in scientific methods. Basically, he's one of these doctors that did all the research in occult, such as in M.K. Often, O-F-T-E-N, and, turned the occult mysterious stuff into just straight science, and that can be explained in the using words like prototaxic, parataxic, and syntax. Anyways, the keywords: archetype, art, biofeedback, collective unconsciousness, creativity, dissociation, dream, drug, effects, ecstasy, ESP, everything: mysticism, hypnosis, meditation, self-actualization, tantra, trance, and this is his own thing. So these are what the book's listed under. So, paranormal psychology. He goes to book 2, Operations of Increasing Order. And other essays on exotic factors of intellect, unusual powers, and abilities, as found in psychic science. Again, this is one of the godfathers of all the programs from the National Defense Education Act. And clearly we know they had Stargate and all these other programs. And what he's doing is he did the research in MK Austin, and maybe not him specifically per se, but he's involved with these that did the research in MK Austin with all the occult techniques. And then they would do rituals on people while they were hooked up to EEGs to measure their brain and actually see what they went through and see if there was any phenomena that was actually produced, and then see if it could be recreated, and then see if it could be used operationally for the military, for intelligence, for other means. Now, what we found was it needs to be people that are young, trained in dissociative states and trances, and that's when it can be elicited. Also, we found out that's what's the best for a behavioral modification. What's the best way to ensure someone carries this out into life? Positive disintegration, which is interrupting a child's integration of the brain by putting them through chaos and putting them through confusing and traumatic circumstances. Now, we know the government was doing all this. So again, Stargate and everything was declassified. Okay, so it's not even a question of if they were doing this. We know they were doing this. The stuff's declassified. We know they were looking at kids. It has to be done with kids. So why would they even be doing it with adults at that point once they find out it has to be with kids? And the other place they're doing with kids. I mean, we're talking about altered states of consciousness, accelerated mental process, apports, auras, clairaudience, clairvoyance, dowsing, if you know what that is, like with the stick, empery, elongation, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, healing, hologram model, incorruptibility, levitation, mortem excursus, materialization, miraculous sight, non-somnia, poltergeist, precognition, psychometry, psychokinesis, psychic hidden surgery. Psychic surgery is a major thing that people got to understand. Stigmata, for brainwashing, psychic surgery. Stigmata, telepathy, teleportation, time warp, transfiguration. All the weird psychic phenomena, specifically that may be elicited in different black magic or things like this, or different events, where odd things happen in physics. For example, how like space-time will bend around an eclipse, things like this. It is all research into all of this. That's what this guy's life was, and this is who we had as the forefathers of these projects. So, take what you will from that. Take what you will from that, but that's what it is. Now we'll just look in depth at his third book, Development of the Psychedelic Individual. Now, a lot of this book, a lot of this is going to sound the same as the first two, but this is his third and kind of builds upon it, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So let's just look here through this. We're going through the table of context. The three modes: prototaxic, parataxic, and syntaxic. I really need to show the. I'll end up putting this in the drive folder so people can see how that relates to the tree of life, because it's very important, again, for occult pathworking, which is what people in cults and satanic royalty and age-old orders that have been going on put themselves through from young for development. And it's been taboo and mystical to people, but really you can demystify it, and that's kind of what this guy did for operational purposes and purposes of development. And so it's important to see how occult pathworking is just basically relayed and put into child development programs. And there's billions of people in the world. Do you think some kids have some abilities? Maybe. But the other aspect that's very, 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 very important, and this is going to be, I'll show a couple more videos real quick, and then we'll go to the breakdown of this book. But the other thing is, it's not only about kids having psychic abilities. That's what you have to understand. It's not only about kids having psychic abilities. It's about kids being susceptible to believing they went through experiences when they're being brainwashed because they already believe in it.
And don't get into the philosophical argument that God created them and they have to be real, or does God exist, because it's really an irrelevant argument in this particular context. The critical thing is, if people will kill others because they think their mystical experience, their God experience was true, Shouldn't we know the brain mechanisms responsible for that?
And yes, he said that in 2007, but obviously the sentiment has already been the same. And then we look back at his work in the early 90s, and guess what they were doing?
What we've been doing recently is generating words as magnetic patterns. And even though the person isn't hearing it through their ears, their brain is interpreting it. So they're actually having fragments of experiences as if they're hearing it when in actual fact it cannot be.
And what you have to understand is, if you find the right child in these gifted and talented programs, and then they are taken out of class under pretenses, and they already have the existing conditions and are predisposed to being susceptible to this technology, this can be done in hours. Over time, this can be done in individual sessions of 30 minutes. They have a magnetic pattern, which is literally a programming script from everything they had learned from you in this gifted and talented class. They will have you do assignments where you tell them your desires, where you think this. And then using a technique called an Ericksonian hypnosis NLP technique, they go with your wants and desires in your psyche and create a script, a brainwashing script to make you believe you had an experience. And you're hooked up very quickly to some earphones, to a helmet, and they can literally brainwash certain children that are predisposed, have pre-existing dissociation, with these magnetic patterns shot through a helmet in hours. Some of the individual sessions can be as little as 15 minutes, and that's with prep, them going through the experience, and then shutting down and bringing them back to consciousness. Of course, there has to be things along the way before then, but this is how quick that could happen. And that was in the 90s.
But where are the limits? What else can people be made to believe?
But one thing that's really clear, you can control the person's experiences and they don't know they're being controlled. That's why this technology...
That's it. All right. So that's why it's so important to understand. It's not just about psychic abilities. It's about being predisposed to believing you had them. Whether it's a real phenomenon or not is irrelevant to if it is being identified and used in order to brainwash people. Now, Gawain's last book, or maybe this wasn't his last, but it goes through space, the physical universe, time, ego. It goes into the different protaxic modes of trance, panic reaction, developmental forcing, and positive disintegration. Do you understand? Unstressing trance, general, group trance stance, possession trance, mediumistic trance, shamanistic trance, general, qualifications, training, initiation rituals. You understand? Magic, hypnosis, general, hysteria, auto-hypnosis, autogenic training. You understand self-hypnosis, which, for example, Silva mind control is taught in many gate classes. Psychedelic drugs, masculine, LSD, which we know is in Gifted Child Quarterly, marijuana, miscellaneous drugs, conclusion, delirium. Sensory deprivation, ESP effects, general hallucinations, auditory hallucinations, visual, hypnagogic hallucinations. And guess what? That technology can make you think you had a hallucination. They can set a post-hypnotic trigger. So whenever they give you the trigger, you will remember the helmet experience, think you had some holy experience randomly when you're walking down the street, but it was the designed patterned experience. And some people might think, for example, that God told them to kill. The other might say, hey, I think I should do this, and I expect if someone comes to me today and, says this, maybe it will be like I should listen to them and believe them. And then somebody seemingly random comes along later and says something. It's just like all sorts of shit. It's easy to manipulate someone. Anyways. Obviously, psychic surgery, you see what this guy's into. Absolutely everything. Out-of-body experiences, we know that was being tested. It's all getting into this. You understand. Do you see everything? Rituals, metaphysics. I think it's safe to say that this guy was obviously involved with everything that MK Ultra and Stargate, Grill Flame, associated projects were involved with on the record. And he was essentially the godfather of the gifted and talented education. So
the occultism too.
Yes, and if you get into his book, you'll say, oh shit, this is straight occult, because even the diagrams and everything, but he's just explaining it from a science perspective. Instead of telling you from a mystical occult with the kind of certain wording, very age-oldy, wordsmithery, but not very clear and concise, this is a strict scientific explanation of the same phenomena that some sects and people and families and bloodlines have been using for who knows how long. but this was brought forth. So anyway. anyway. So.
I think I might. Okay.
And this book is available. People can go get it, right?
I'm not sure, but these documents we'll make a drive and give the link for everybody.
Okay.
But I'm sure they could find it. Yeah, I mean somewhere. I don't know. I do have a text of the book, but it's like really hard to read. Yeah, I hate, it's just like a screen of just text, not really formatted. But anyways, okay, so now we've thoroughly established that gate programs obviously are for national security, national defense. The same people that ran all these programs obviously had to do with MK Ultra, all this, and into the exact same stuff that's been declassified, but not openly admitted to being on children. But I mean, that I don't know how you could make it any more crystal clear than that personally. But that's just me, and I'm definitely biased. So now let's go to what we know happens in the classroom. And some of this may be triggering, so I want to warn people ahead of time. Now, first of all, one of the tests that identify people, some people might recognize, was called a CAT-5. Okay? So say if you're constantly testing in the 99 percentile or close to in certain things, bam, gifted program. Say you're already tapped and you're generational and going into this, and they really want you in a certain program, and it's really risky, and they might not want it to happen at the school. Well, what they'll do is they'll know someone. Someone will be like, oh, with this special child, oh, we hate to see him. Nah. And this is what's told to the teacher. Say, I am the overhead of the program that works for, say, the CIA or the DIA or, whoever the fuck. And I say, listen, Miss Smith is the teacher. Say, oh, I know Johnny's really talented, but I know he comes from a poor family, and I just can't stand to see that. I'll tell you what, I'm going to talk to the people, and we're going to try to get funding for him. I'm not sure if we can, but we'll try, okay? Because we'd love to help that kid. The teacher's going to feel great. Talk to the parents. The parents are talking to an enthusiastic teacher. They're like, oh my God, my child's going to get the chance I could never provide for them. I'm so glad, right? And then I come back after the teachers talk to them, and they're on board. They hope they get it. Okay, cool. Well, guess what? Guess what then? What I need you to give them this number, because we have found them some funding, but we can't do it because my boss said no. But I know some really good private investigators or private investors that are great. They're called the associates.
Wow.
You understand? And it's easy. Who wouldn't say yes? If I didn't know what I knew, I would. If I was poor, I had a gifted child, I knew I didn't have the money to send them where they needed to truly excel in life and get the chances I never had, you better believe I'm jumping at the funding. What the fuck? I talked to them, they just want funding, and here's the school we'll go to, we'll put them through this. It's a little private institution. Look at the ratings on this. It's great. Look, guess who else went to this school? This famous person, this famous person. Oh, fuck, you would almost be foolish to say no. Almost. Now, again, when you get to, well, we'll go straight in here. This is a scrubbed article from 97. You can't find this on the internet, but I will provide this. This is it was in the Education Reporter, and it was in something else other than that. I forget, because this is not the main name. This is some really small shit right here, but gifted and talented curriculum program raises concerns. Hillsborough, New Jersey. This is in the Northeast. Parents who were originally puffed up with pride when told by their local public school that their fourth grade child should be promoted into a gifted and talented class became concerned about the contents of the course when they read the document that defines its philosophy. It brags that this is a differentiated program in goals and curriculum, and that class size will be limited to 12 students. The document starts out using all the trendy public school buzzwords: self-esteem, self-awareness, problem-solving, decision-making, higher cognitive processes, self and peer evaluation, and self-direction. Page after page instructs the teacher how to give guided imagery exercises under the caption, "Your mind's eye." The room will be darkened. Students must find comfortable position. Eyes may be closed or open. Closed is preferable. Concentrate on slowly breathing, releasing energy from your body. This is classic progressive hypnosis, self-hypnosis, meditation, right? To relax the conscious and the body. Tranquil Scene is the title of one imagery exercise. You're standing on a sandy beach. Feel the sand between your toes. See little white fluffy clouds drifting, drifting. See yourself sipping to your favorite drink. Taste it. Enjoy. At the end of the exercise, the teacher is instructed to count to 10, thereby giving students an opportunity to adjust to returning. Again, this is just you're feeling more awake, more response. 2, you're wider, more awake, feeling better than before. 1, wake up, feeling fully refreshed, like you had a full night's sleep when I snap. You know, I mean, it's literally very stereotypical stuff, right? So parents worry that it is an out-of-body experience if it takes a count of 10 to return to reality. Now, I'm not sure if that's quite it, right? I think there's deeper implications, but a second instructional imagery exercise called fruit might be substitute for lunch. Sit comfortably, relax, close your eyes, see a large fruit, see yourself taking a big bite, hear the crunch, enjoy the taste, smell it. Now, you have to understand, this is a very strong mental exercise. You keep on doing this, you'll be able to do this better, and it actually can improve cognitive ability. You should also know this is stereotypical occult development, such as in, what are some of these mainstream known things? The Hermetic Order of the Order of the Golden Dawn, right? You got Israel Regardie, Elefante, even Crowley, all these people. This is classic occult development. And I personally, I understand if most people are against this, especially from a biblical or Christian perspective. But I mean, yes, a cult has ruined it. So I don't like them to ruin everything. There are certain practices that can be benign, like visualizing and, you know, trying to visualize your goals. Like this, there's nothing bad about that. I'm just merely saying that this is the exact same things that are done for occult development and occult path working. So, and there are good elements to this, but the curriculum is not just a mindless activity to entertain students. It's guided imagery with a purpose. The teacher is instructed to chart names of students, number of objects remembered, and specifically what objects each student remembered. Now, is it because they're searching for kids that can actually remote view? Or is it because they're using it for psychological analysis to develop a profile so they can use it to further understand and manipulate the subject? What purpose will the teacher chart this imagery information about each student? To scan it into the child's computer profile? To follow up with psychiatric sessions with a school counselor? Is this how public schools are helping our best and brightest students? And part of the reason that this article came out was because basically they approached some of the parents wrong and tried to scare the parents into giving permission to funnel them into a further out program. Because, you know, they're like, oh, say this was kind of upsetting that your child drew this or something. It might point to a problem. We think we should put him in for counseling, so on and so forth. There's, you know, a wide range of things taken because whatever is going on with the child and their family, you know, they have to lure them in accordingly. And then sometimes they're not luring them in directly. Sometimes the teacher that's teaching these classes is actually benign, doesn't know, and they're just doing what they're told or doing what they think. So, you know, there's a lot of moving pieces to this. Anyways, but there is a chart, and it's on the child's computer profile, and not just what they remember is on there, all the assignments. And we're talking about, they'll be like, you know, what did you want to be when you grow up? What's your favorite color? What's this? What's that? Things you won't remember 20 years later in life, but if are covertly used against you and a subconscious level can be used to manipulate you without you knowing. Just like nowadays, how people's social media profiles are used to advertise and manipulate them through advertising. Well, guess what? The basis for that was used before advertising was used for behavioral modification, and it still is to this day. It's, you know, it's obviously used for many things. Now, then the teacher is instructed to conduct discussions on sleep and dream therapy. Students are told to remember and record a dream and to discuss their dreams and discover how certain parts stand out or are enlarged or diminished or distorted. It's not surprising that parents are demanding laws to protect student privacy. The schools seem obsessed with gathering personal information from children. Yes, gathering personal information from children because they're learning everything about these children in order to route them directly how they want in life. They need everything they can to develop a complete profile on this child, which they will largely already have in place if they're in this program. But once they're in this program, then they can really wrap their head around, look, this child is going to be able to be an asset, this one is not. Boom, route them accordingly. And, you know, don't put any more resources if it's not going to be fruitful. Because that's one thing. If there's one thing the government doesn't like, it's throwing resources at something to not getting anything back.
Yeah.
Now, the next exercise is supposed to help students engage in analysis Indeed, it takes extraordinary analysis to understand why the curriculum calls this abstract communication. Students are told to form a human sculpture which communicates their analysis in an abstract way. Students get into small groups and create sculptures, making sure that at least one part of somebody is connected to someone else's. A statement about a dream could be used to stimulate individual groups and group sculptures. Now, you have to understand, this sounds like a very abstract, but abstract communication, in essence, it's about covert communication. Have you ever heard of someone ordering a pizza when they were kidnapped and then writing 911 to help me, right? That's a very weak way of abstract communication because it's a direct communication, but it's in an abstract way. Well, it's like giving someone a sign like, are you okay? And you're like, oh yeah, don't worry, I'm fine. But you give them the wide eyes like, help, 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 call 911. You understand? So, spies might need to discuss things covertly. And you can't just turn 21 and go to spy school and then learn how to pass secret messages casually in the middle of conversation. But if in school you learned it in a fun game and then practiced it, and it became a game that you know so well, it's like playing these games to where, if you see a yellow car, you punch someone and say punch bug or something stupid. Just like there's different little games. It's literally a game to get you engaged in learning, to develop a certain skill that could never be taught that naturally or to that degree later in life. And then it kind of embeds just into how you are. And it's just so much better than if you're trying to learn these skills. So like there's certain things like that. And if someone excels in that, then they're routed further into that program. Okay, you're looking to go into covert operations, or or just analysis, just anything. There's many applications. I'm just trying to provide a little context. Now, this sounds cozy. It surely will be more fun than tiresome tasks traditionally given to fourth graders, such as learning decimals, fractions, long division, writing simple compositions. But remember, this is all in addition to other curriculum. It's not like this replaces it. Now, the fourth grade gifted and talented students are now ready to progress into some heavy learning. Students are taught to use the experimental research technique in a self-directed learning activity related to experimental anomalies. So, experimental research and self-directed to learn experimental anomalies. So, basically, think about if you're a covert operative trying to investigate. You're going to have to be self-directed. You're going to be looking for experimental anomalies. You're not sure if that's what you're looking for, but you're looking for anything anomaly, anything to investigate. And you might have to get creative with the research techniques and inventive. You understand? It's not all about psychic and paranormal. We're looking for real world application of talents, and we're looking to develop them in a fun and engaging way to where a child naturally wants to do it so that it becomes a part of who they are. Now, students are told to conduct their own experiments. Oh, nope. I skipped it. The teacher is instructed to introduce clairvoyance, which the curriculum defines as seeing events taking place far away, telepathy, defined as the ability to send messages from one person's mind to another, precognition, defined as predicting events in the future, and psychokinesis, defined as moving objects with concentrated mental energy. Students are told to conduct their own experiments and report their conclusions to the classes. Will this information be scanned into the students' computer profiles? Now, how will the students' work be graded? Perhaps it doesn't matter anymore since all students get A's and B's to preserve their self-esteem. Now, here's the thing, though. Say a child says, ooh, I did see something, and we found out that child's extra imaginative and inventive, and no one can take them seriously in the class. Well, we might know, hey, this is an ideal subject to set up as a patsy, because they might try to explain themselves, but they have such an imagination and already aren't taken seriously, they would never be credible. I mean, there's so many different things here, but you understand they're developing a complete profile, putting people through specific testing to basically tick different boxes of each category and then route accordingly. The federal Javits Gifted and Talented Education Act, again, that we went for, remember, that was the only federal. It was Javits, and then it went to No Child Left Behind, then it went to Every Child Succeeds. The federal Javits Gifted and Talented Education Act, that was made the only federally mandated one, because there's only some states have it. Just remember, this is created with the National Defense Education Act, and who went to the NRCGT, right? Linked up with the NACG, linked in with Gowan. I mean, obviously, it's all connected. Laid out the vision that the federal taxpayers should give children of outstanding talent some services or activities not ordinarily provided by the schools. Parents wonder if this is what Senator Jacob Javits had in mind when he sponsored the law. Don't you love how shit used to be? They would never put this out. This is scrubbed from the internet. You cannot find this. But yeah, so, I mean, just from that alone, that's obviously Stargate Gateway Voyage. A lot of that, if you just look at it. Also, Silva Ultra Mind. Silva mind control, which is self-hypnosis, using fingertips and numbers as triggers to go back deeper automatically later. You can just, instead of having to spend 5 minutes hypnotizing yourself and counting backwards from 100, et cetera, what you do is before you come out of meditation with the counting back from 10, 1, feeling lighter, feeling more awake. Before you wake yourself up, you hold your thumb to your pinky finger and say, you touch your thumb to your pinky finger, and whenever you close your eyes and count backwards from 10 while tapping your thumb with your pinky finger, you will go back in just as deep, if not deeper, of a trance, and blah, 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 blah. So stuff like that. So that's Silva mind control. Ultra mind, and Ultra mind, which is a method of Silva mind control, they have what's called the mind files. And I have the audio for this, and this is something that I went through in school, and it basically teaches to create mind files in your head, which is a computer system with files for mind files to remember certain things. And then it teaches you mnemonic tricks to remember long things. So just you can basically remember an infinite chain of numbers if you link it together in sections of no more than a few with something very weird and odd. There's different mnemonic tricks that you can learn, and so on and so forth. But so that's Ultramind mind files, Silva mind control, and then of course the Monroe Institute, which is declassified in the Stargate program, was a large part of it. The Monroe Institute Gateway Voyage. And now we're getting into what happened in some of these classes. You might remember these, because this was used in the Monroe Institute Gateway Voyage, because it's the hemisync where it would be doing tones and things in each ear to help you get to this brain state faster. You're getting to a brain state that a monk takes 20 years to be able to get to. You're able to get to it in the second time ever. You understand? So this was used for the Gateway Voyage, Silva mind control, and Ultramind mind files. Then you have, some of you might remember this, appropriately named SRA, and I think we all know about SRA, but reading laboratory. We have the Zener cards, which they were used to test some people for psychic abilities, and these, sometimes there's 5 of them. I think there's a few different versions, but these are called Zener, Z-E-N-E-R cards to test for psychic abilities. Those were utilized.
Could you explain kind of what the shapes are, just for people who might only be listening?
There's like a plus, a star, 3 wavy lines that are, kind of like if you took your fingers and ran them down a screen and moved it side to side, like in the sand, and then a square. Yeah, they're just simple things, but basically, I think what would happen is like there's 4, you turn them all upside down and scramble, and then you could hold one and guess what it's going to be or something. I'm not exactly sure. I'll be honest, I don't remember, but it's used to test for psychic ability. And then the Rorschach, like the imagery to where they show you ink blots. A lot of times it looks like a moth or a butterfly or a face or a bat, and that's kind of like a psychology analyzing thing. And then getting forward again, remember, they were the first ones to introduce computer-assisted learning, and introducing the computer-assisted learning came Cubic. Now, this is a little bit newer, but this was being used. This is used once people get a little bit older. This part, I believe, isn't until your next part of brain stage development, which there's a few stages, and I think from like after you turn 8, it goes into the stage where this sort of thing is useful. This is a game-based learning called from Cubic, C-U-B-I-C. And they also have what's called Advanced Learning Solutions. So Advanced Learning Solutions also deals with linguistics. But what this is, for example, this is a nuclear submarine. They have it for aviation. Basically, these are games to teach you. There's everything from demolition, counter demolition. There is nuclear, submarine maintenance. There's things teaching you about firearms. There is everything from aviation, different equipment, and then even in some places where people will be took, for example, like NASA Space Camp, they would have Cubic, where you would go inside an inflatable room, and in the inflatable room there'd be a chair and like an inflatable desk, but it would have a hard panel in it, and that hard panel would match exactly what was in, for example, a helicopter, right? Or a plane, so on and so forth. And that way a child could learn to operate this military equipment without actually having access to the military equipment itself. They're basically using advanced simulators. This is super advanced, top-of-the-line simulators, but they use children on this. And here, I got to turn this on real quick, actually. Hold on 1 second. I gotta switch this. I gotta enable this.
You're good. Great presentation. This is amazing.
We're right. Yeah, we're right here at the end.
You're good. Take your time. This is awesome. So many people are going to get so much value from this. It's such a consistency.
So, yeah, I mean, you know, you can't tell me that kids aren't testing this. I turn on the internet for a second. Okay, so guess what? Again, STEM, right? Okay, it's STEM with the NSA, like we were talking earlier. Okay. A new report into DARPA-funded research draws deep connections between computer games for children and advanced military software. A modern-day Ender's game using STEM, which was the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, to improve U.S. soldier training. These aren't pre-teens inadvertently directing fleets of starships to destroy alien planets, though, with the kids instead said to be unknowingly helping develop software which will train military personnel on things like avoiding counterinsurgency and pacifying occupied territories. Now, sure, I'm sure some of the information went to the military, but really what it was is training the kids ahead of time. Just get the fuck out of here. You know what I'm saying? It is absolutely ridiculous. And just real quick, as a matter of fact, let me show one more short video of the Cubic curriculum, and then we are going to wrap up the Gifted and Talent program. Just go with a few testimonies from around the internet of, you know, what people are saying about these gifted and talented programs. I feel like it's pretty obvious at this point, but, you know, I mean, maybe it's not. But it's literally all record, and the parts that aren't like completely linked up of their self, you know, still match up with time by the time. And then if you know, it'll be really hard to follow the money. There's a lot going on there. But the personnel, everything's it's pretty obvious if you ask me. So if this doesn't come up, I'm going to give up. Okay. I was over here talking about being so secure, and I did temporarily enable internet on here. Okay, let's see. Oh, there we go. Just to show people what this looks like. Because a lot of people will have been brought to camps and stuff like this and seen this equipment, and a lot of people will have been took to this as well. And this is, just so you know, is from 9 years ago.
Bloodline is a series of simulators of different sizes and capabilities. It allows officers and security personnel to train on the use of force continuum, that is, when to use less than lethal weapons as opposed to deadly force in a given engagement. The Prism product line can be used for both live fire and virtual training.
Now, this is actually... Let me see if I can find the right one here, because I'm going to give up pretty quick.
You're good. Take your time. Also,
Okay, here it is. Advanced learning solution. Okay. Introduce game-based learning. Here we go.
Throughout history, the great teachers knew that the secret to effective training was no mystery. Ancient Greek and Chinese philosophers taught us, "Tell me and I forget. Teach me and I remember. Involve me and I learn." In other words, learning by doing is vastly superior to learning by listening,
You have to
reading, or
understand
watching.
when this came out, before Call of Duty,
At
before
Cubic
any of
Advanced
this.
Learning Solutions, we apply the wisdom of the ages using cutting-edge technology to create training programs that live in high-resolution 3D gaming environments. Students actually experience what they're supposed to be learning. Our virtual training is more than teaching simple tasks. Cubic creates immersive virtual environments using the same technologies as those used in the best-selling video games on the market today. But our virtual training is more than just presenting the same old material in an interesting format. It combines the best features of computer-based training and on-the-job training with the focus, attention, and fun of video games in a 3D environment. At Cubic, we've developed tools that allow us to provide all of this at costs that rival those of traditional methods. Cubic's approach effectively and rapidly trains workers, improving each individual's skills with a better with the guidance of an in-game trainer. He or she then runs the task without help and is evaluated on their performance. training to meet the needs of the learner, but
It's so
deal with
comprehensive.
inclement weather, or training oil rig workers to repair a malfunctioning drill while it is spewing crude oil.
You understand? It's literally everything. So the thing is, it's just so many things. And I was trying to see if they actually would have an example of the augmented reality, but I don't know that they are going to have that. I was trying to look to see if they would have the one where it's the bubble dome, because it's I guarantee if anybody's been to space camp, they would likely remember the room where they were using cubic. It's what they've been using for forever. And they go into transportation and all sorts of stuff, but we'll go to this last one. They have
Michael's
advanced linguistics.
big fall sale is going on now. Score 4.
That happens to me all the time.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll watch this. So they have linguistics. They have all sorts of stuff. I mean, it's fucking insane. Hurry the fuck up.
Going beyond what simulations have previously done. But just what goes into creating these immersive, high-fidelity training environments? The process begins with research. It takes teams of instructional system designers and subject matter experts.
Okay, so anyway, remember, we had this, and remember, we just looked at the article admitting that kids are testing this stuff, at least. So, you know, and remember, it even said that the kids were unwitting in the article, because it said they're just playing it, but then they take what they learn, you know, for the military. But really, they're fucking training kids with this. You understand? Like, you understand, by the time I was a teenager, I had more hours in than any new recruit to any branch ever, because I had literally years. I was doing a lot of this in the umbrella program too. Years and years of just training and military equipment, aviation, nuclear submarine, demolition, counter demolition, surveillance, counter surveillance, all the equipment, you know, it's advanced communications, everything. It's fucking ridiculous. So, I mean, you understand like how into Call of Duty these kids get. I'm gonna keep on saying Call of Duty. That's the only one I know.
Right.
But
yeah, those
yeah.
ones are really popular.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just don't even know what to say. So all right. I mean, we got a few quotes from people. All I have left here on my end, I got like a couple old documents, then they're like 200 pages, and they're just like, you know, one from the 60s, one from the 70s, I think, where it's like gifted child, you know, just lays out the curriculum. And it's just it would just reinforce it. So we don't even need to go over that, because it's been quite a while here. But all I have left is just a few, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7 quotes from different forums online of people talking about this stuff that I'd rattle off. Do you have any questions or statements before I get to that about anything?
Just thank you. All the extensive work that you put into this presentation is incredible. So I'm just really grateful. I know this is going to be really valuable for everybody to hear, and just to understand how tied in our school system is with government. I think we all forget that, you know, especially parents who are just trying to do the best thing for their children, and even teachers, you know. So this is it's a good reminder in so many ways, but also to educate people just on the potential dangers. Like how you said, maybe not everybody involved is inherently bad. You know, there's a lot of great people that are working at the bottom level of very nefarious organizations. You know, you could look at banking, for example, like there's Freemasons, whatever it is, you know, there are good people who get into things that are nefarious. But, you know, this is just a great reminder for all of us that, you know, we need to stay vigilant and ask questions about the people that start programs, about who's involved, what the network is around it, the connections. And you have done a beautiful job, really fantastic job helping weave that for all of us and providing so many great examples. So I just want to thank you with all my heart for this.
Thanks, Emma.
I forgot. I set that up.
I was not expecting that. That's hilarious.
What do I sound like? What I sound like in real life? I sound like this. So yeah, no, I mean, thank you. And the thing is, yeah, last one I'm going to shame. Like, I don't shame my mother. I understand she had her hands full, you know, for this. I don't shame my father, who wasn't really necessarily involved with any of that because he wasn't around. But so the thing is, I don't fault anybody, but here's the thing is, no matter how fucked up your situation is, you're the one raising your kid. And if you let anybody else try to raise your kid or just put the trust into them because you feel lucky or anything, that's a mistake. If you want to ask certain questions, if you want to be able to visit, if you want to know more, and in any way, shape, or form you are criticized, ridiculed, or whisked away, ridden off, it's not a good sign. And I understand they might have their hands full and they're already doing you a favor or something like that. But if someone can't relate on the simple, topic of caring about the kid, making sure, that everything's okay, then even if it's a good program, that's probably not the people you're overseeing your child anyways. If they can't take just a second to reassure any legitimate things. The important thing is if you're raising concerns with the school or something like that, you really need to collect yourself and prepare, make sure you properly articulate it. You don't want to just finally be fed up and then rant off and be upset in a moment to where you're angry or not actually articulating. You need to collect yourself and prepare what to say. You might even need to practice it. I know someone recently who had went through these programs as a kid. Now their children was getting a chance to go in the gifted and talented education program. And what they did was, I'd known this person for a while and they're familiar with this information too. They put together just a few key parts of it and say, look, unfortunately, some family was involved with some of this stuff when I was a kid, and it's very dirty world. I don't think that anything that's happening there, but I would never feel right about myself unless I asked a few questions about where this takes place, if there's ever any external field trips, who exactly is the teacher from this school that y'all know, or is it an outside teacher? How does this go? I have a few concerns that I just need alleviated because I want my child to get the best education, the best care possible, but there are legitimate concerns in psych, this, and this. Not too much. Don't talk like me. You're not going to get your point across. They're going to be pissed off that they even have to deal with you. You also have to understand that there's a lot of bad parents out there that have ruined it and desensitized them, and they're just think everybody's a hassle. So you have to make sure that you address it and you do apply yourself, but you have to make sure that you articulate it, keep it concise, and are understanding at the same time. You want to be cool, calm, and collected, not confrontational. If they escalate it, you really got to prepare for this. It's hard. Some of these motherfuckers are assholes. They're also used to dealing with people every day. So, it's just, bottom line is, you can't trust anybody no matter fucking what. And if there's a problem with you checking in and making sure your child's all right, then there's another problem already. And fuck it. If that's a problem, then, I understand there's limited options. The world's not perfect. Look, here's more information. Try to use it to the best of your advantage. Let's do everything we can to protect our children in the future. There's, it's an imperfect world, but hopefully some of this will help. You address the situation, prevent the situation, come together, raise public awareness to stop the bad parts of the situation. We do need gifted and talented programs. What we do not need is unethical and detrimental methods being used, because many of these children end up in, many children don't grow up to be functional. There's already a problem. You have to understand that a lot of gifted people, intelligent kids, get into trouble. Sometimes because they're not stimulated, and so they'll go get into trouble. They have a high percentage of doing drugs and things. But some people are gifted specifically because they've been through abuse. Because when a kid's been through abuse, it just, their mind goes into overdrive trying to figure out how to stop it, and it can, as a byproduct, actually cause them to have increased intelligence or at least awareness, just due to self-preservation, survival. Analysts, they just have to, their brain has to turn on in rapid fire. So so they're already troubled. We need something for the gifted kids, obviously, but what we don't need is the methods adding to their troubles, destabilizing them, and then when it goes wrong, them ending up in the mental institution, and they finally remember some weird shit that happened in the program, and no one believes them, and it makes them sound even more crazy, and then instead of getting help, they pump them full of schizophrenia meds.
Yeah.
I know plenty of people that has happened to, and that's one of the most upsetting parts, and so that's the thing is, we've got to stop the bad parts. We do need gifted and talented education. We don't need horrible methods. We don't need it to be taboo. We need everything to be done in the light. And if it's necessary, then it can be justified and it's necessary and we can know about it. We're all adults here. We're all adults here, except for the fucked up children that are having the shit done to them. But so, it's other than that, obviously we have a problem at the top with corruption running the world because they were willing to use, rough methods to get there when other people weren't. And they're organized and the good people aren't. So us good people, we need to become organized together to make sure we are controlling our future. Because guess what? If you're trusting the government for your future, they're worried about them. And the government's not even a singular person. So the group that's in the government that has their players is organized and using it only to their advantage. Unfortunately, you have to basically assume everybody's against you. No one's looking out for you and your kids but you, and then maybe fellows. But we can't be looking for a politician to save us. We can't be looking for an institution to save us. We can't even be looking, unfortunately, and yes, we do need to be diligent and, go to the proper channels, but you can't even trust law enforcement because you see what happens and how stressful it is to even report anything, and look at all these school abuse cases that got covered up for years. Who are you kidding? So anyways, we're going to come together. We're about to, we're about to put a lid on all this and continue our children's positive gifted education in a safe manner that's cohesive and symbiotic. All right. So what people have been saying, just a few brief clips. I was in AIM, gifted, talented program since first grade all the way through sixth. I barely remember anything at all from 1 through fourth grade. AIM classes, none of them until fourth or fifth grade. I do have big gaps of general memory in those years as well. I had strange experience in second grade where my teacher and her quite older student teacher, because they bring in third parties, would take me out of lunch and recess and have me read books into a recorder and answer questions about how I learned to read, among other things that I can't remember. And there's plenty of reasons they could do this, but they could do a lot of things with recordings. Who knows exactly what they were doing there, but I could, talk for 15 minutes about it. Let's avoid that. This was a public school. It was not normal institutionalized education. My mom and I were made to feel that this was just because I was such an advanced reader. Now I know this is highly suspect. My poems and stuff I would write would also disappear off the walls of the school. I used to watch Alice in Wonderland at home every day in the fourth grade, which I now know is a programming type Disney movie. But I'm not sure if that's what was going on there. I had huge aversions to the Pinocchio movie. What you guys have to understand is this might sound weird to someone without context, but if you look into all the information about this declassified with MK Ultra and programming, and then, look into the institutions, Disney was involved. We know that some of those were used as scripts. When people report and say, oh yeah, I saw this movie, but it was slightly different. And then they were, abusing me to it. People are going to be like, yeah, right. You saw a movie and that's specifically the reason that's used. Also, since it's such a mainstream concept, it's used because people will constantly see it randomly and it will subconsciously reinforce their trauma. Everything's really scientific and thought out here, as you could see with the research before these gifted and talented programs. And it all goes into, again, occult. So anyways, I do remember weird things where 10 birds would be dead in our only yard. No one knew why. This person had UFO memories, astral, et cetera, et cetera. It's really, kind of the usual. There's a lot of uncertainty. They do a lot of things. You saw that helmet. They can make you think you met God. They can make you think you met aliens. I'm not saying that, I'm not saying don't believe in God. I'm not saying that aliens aren't real, but I'm saying they're definitely brainwashing people and using specific things. So if they try to disclose, everything comes up and they remember it all at once, and then it doesn't make sense. I mean, this is, I hope this provides some clarification. Here's someone else. I stumbled onto GitHub research through a blog a woman wrote concerning the negative psychological impact of gate programming, and also her concerns on it being a government programming mechanism, which the own public information says it is. They even use the word programming, and then you have forced disintegration. I mean, come on. Unfortunately, they actually say that they're doing this to a certain extent. The way they say it and the parts they show are selective, sure. Anyways, I was in GATE as a child, and one day I remembered it and realized I couldn't remember much about it at all, and for some reason decided to research it if it had the same issue, if others had the same issue. Here's another person. As far as the GATE program, I formed my own belief that it was some covert government program, and everything I found out so far has made that belief more concrete. I agree. Here's someone else. Gifted and talented exams, GATE program is still happening. My perception threw them off and made the emotional, unemotional, emotional. It was a victory, and I've never regretted it. I'm not exactly sure what this person was responding to. I sifted a lot of random, online comments. But, I mean, you can tell, obviously, they were also of the mind that something was going on. Here's someone else. No, it's a recruitment program that I believe is the entry into some very specific programs. And again, that's very important to realize. Not everybody in the gate is sitting there being brainwashed. It's very selective. They're taking certain people and doing it, and there's different levels and different depths and then sub-programs. And like I said, if you're really trying to get in one, they'll scribble on the back of a paper, the associates, please contact this. So on and so forth. I'm still piecing some together, and I'm apprehensive of saying all that I remember, but was always in a few groups like that, was always in gifted advanced programs, art and music programs, or they just use a counselor as an excuse to pull me out of class. One of the first biggest that comes to mind was in middle school. I was part of a peer leadership group, which went on to retreats. A lot of work was done through that group, and I forget exactly what it's called. And I wish I could come up with it now, but there was a group that basically held simulated political meetings of world leaders. It was something world leaders for future world leaders, grooming them. And they would meet at hotels and have conventions, and then kids would be supposed to remember stuff and then would be asked certain questions about the meetings. And it was basically like covert spy training and selection, and then they would tap certain individuals. But there's just a lot of different things. It goes so heavily into camps, and then here was something saying the legislation was drafted and passed in 1958, the Javits Act. They said it was all 50 states. That's federal. We know in state laws it was 37 supposedly, maybe, but obviously federal is federal. And then yes, they weren't education and research programs from educators, but they were from people from the fields of psychology and psychiatry. And we know more specifically now that it is in fact people from the field of military psychology and psychiatry. So all in all, these programs are selecting and they're selecting and abusing children for the methods that are just crucial methods. And on top of that, I have to say this, I have to drive it in, just like the CIA created the crack epidemic in Iran-Contra and Pegasus, all declassified, maybe not Pegasus, but Iran-Contra, and talked about Oliver North got in trouble, all that. They created that to fund wars and black budget programs. Well, once they did the research and found out that abused kids, specifically generationally abused kids, but kids with dissociation or forced development, positive disintegration, are needed to truly do these methods, they created the environment for a child abuse epidemic. And they have pedo rings, and they have a lot of people that learn these techniques and create the base layers so they could never do it directly and get in trouble. And then these people, they can blackmail them if they want. They can use them as assets, and then they also collect the children and funnel them into the programs. You understand? And then no matter what, if a kid's found to be abused by one of these assholes, like me, I was from a horrible place where I got abused by a mortician. And then what happens is what? They come in and say, oh, well, he's troubled. He's had a bad past, so we're going to put him into, counseling. Okay, so then that's a pretense again, so they can grab me. Because what parents that had their child abused isn't going to take up counseling? Of course you want counseling for your kid. You understand? So, it's a double whammy. They can blackmail the fucking pedophiles, do whatever they want with them. They have the kids, and plus they have perfect pretexts now that they're the good guys saving the kids. So it's really insidious. I mean, and it's hard to avoid. Think about, what are you going to do when you're in the middle of this? It's horrible. So they created the child abuse epidemic. And we're talking about, this ties in with the Catholic Church, with Mormon LDS, with Jehovah's Witnesses, Scientology, with all these religious organizations, including the more pocketed extreme ones and the Christian denominations where they're doing the, some of the more extreme stuff. All this, it ties in. The VIP rings, yes. And people say, okay, just like with the VIPs, how could they all be abusing children? It is this important program where they're making assets. So, it's national security, and other people are doing it too. And obviously I'm not for it, but I'm just trying to say from a no-nonsense government perspective, they said they're doing this. All the information's out there. It's pretty easy to see when you put it together. No one should be surprised. And we know that the various times certain things have popped up, from the Catholic Church sex abuse, Boy Scout sex abuse, right? From MK Ultra, from the 95 ACHRE hearings. They're never doing anything. From Sandusky, from Nassar, I mean, you know, the Boy Scout, Catholic Church, everything. I mean, everything. What have they done other than keep it internal, CIT, critical investigative technique, and keep it in-house, cover it up, and allow it to continue, because it is tied in with national security. And those are also creating the basis to funnel these children through and enter them into programs. And yes, there's many different levels. People will have different, you know, experiences, but all in all, it all ties together. And there are varying levels of just training, or even on one end of the spectrum, directly brainwashing children in these gifted and talented programs. And my heart goes out to you if you have been affected by this in any way, shape, or form. And we all will do what we can, come together, and, you know, all I can do is everything and anything that I can do. And I pray to God every day.
That was an amazing presentation and speech and just all that information. And I want to encourage people. I'll have Gray give you his information also. You can reach out to any of us privately, but definitely start a conversation in the chat, you guys. If you've gone through this, you might help somebody, and let's connect over this. And I'll have Gray give you guys his information too, if you guys want to reach out privately with some information. But before we do that, Gray, for people who may be parents, you did mention a couple tips earlier, but for maybe parents listening have children in this program now and they're not aware of this, or maybe in the future they'll be asked, should parents say no, or what would you say would be, so, and I know the answer might be different for everybody, but if it was you, what would be your protocol if somebody approached you about putting your children in these programs?
It's going to be widely dependent. It's going to be widely dependent. So, one, I would need at least, you know, you're probably not going to get this on paper, but back in the day they were, such as in that 97 report, the parents were provided the curriculum. You want to get an understanding of the schedule, if there's ever any field trips, the exact teachers that are involved, and the curriculum. And you also have to ask yourself, look, am I in a position where I really can oversee this? Do I know my child well enough? Can I talk to them? Can I look them in the eyes and tell if they're lying? Is there some sort of abuse? Ask them, make sure that they remember throughout the day. I mean, it's sad that you have to do this stuff, but I mean, that's something we can come together and kind of make like a checklist of things, but like, obviously it's going to widely vary where you are and how much you can look at it and all this. I'll be honest, with the current state of the education system, you might want to look into homeschooling. And I remember I realize not everybody's capable of doing that, either capable or having the time capable, or, you know, just to have the know-how, or, you know, and so there's no perfect answer. I would love to delve into that deeper, and I would love to everybody to come together and work together to really find a better way to put that into play. Unfortunately, I haven't put a lot of time and thought into that because I'm more worried about collecting the information anonymously of exactly where it's happening at what time and finding the contemporary and then putting a lid on that from the oversight. So that's kind of what I'm focused on, but it would be smart if we come together with some no nonsense ideas, you know, and get together and really find, look, what are some no nonsense steps we can do, you know, to ensure the safety of our children, because you don't want to pass up, right, opportunity and stuff like that. I do understand that, and that's for sure. So I am not sure, to be honest with you, but I think that's something that everybody needs to be focused on, especially now that I hope this really makes it a lot more clear. It's indisputable of what's going on. It's undisputable. And you don't have to listen to me, and you don't even have to listen to that public information. But if you talk to dissociative trauma therapists worldwide, and just trauma therapists, not even getting into the ones that sprinkled that aren't into the specific therapists, you know, because you got plenty of people that don't even know specifically that something was wrong with that because they haven't, you know, gotten there yet in their own healing. But if you had a census from all the dissociative trauma therapists, you know, they're going to say the same thing. Yeah, we've got a hell of a lot of people saying this is happening from the gifted and talented program. You know, there's definitely something going on there. I mean, it's clear. It's clear as day. We know it's indisputable. So we'll come together, figure out the way to ensure it's not happening. People like me and my associates are going to be working from the top on the oversight. And then people just need to come together and kind of figure out, the best way to approach it for oversight from the bottom. And we're coming at it from both ends. And you know what? I'm also going to take a shot at the middle. We'll figure this out. I wish I had a more conclusive answer, but
No, that's great. It is. And you put together this presentation. I don't expect you to have all the answers to everything. And if you're a parent listening, or if you have navigated this, like leave something in the comments if you have found some type of a solution that works for you, or if you were a parent privy to this and or if you're navigating it right now, even leave some tips in the comments so other people can, you know, hopefully take from that and, you know, use it in their own lives, or give advice to friends or family who are going through maybe a hard time struggling with this, or even just if they're not aware, you know, some things that we can educate parents on whenever they're navigating this with their children. So please use the comment section and connect, you guys. This is a really important topic. It is still happening today, even if it's rebranded, called different things, you know, they are still using these for nefarious purposes. And like Grace said, we need to figure out how to bring the integrity back to these programs, so we're nourishing kids' gifts and not exploiting them, that we're using them for their most positive divine good that they were born with, and not using them for nefarious purposes and harming them. Great, that was awesome. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to that, or just that you wanted to say regarding your presentation that we didn't get to yet?
Basically, well, one, I appreciate you calling it a presentation. I mean, yeah, I put some stuff together and talked, but it wasn't that cohesive, but I do feel it paints the picture pretty clearly. I would say on the spot right now, if I had a kid going in the program, all this, I'd tell them, look, long story short, I had family that was abused in one of these programs when they were younger. I want my child to have this opportunity. I'm extremely torn. Can I get familiar with, the schedule, the curriculum, who's teaching this? I might, want to arrange some periodic check-in or something, and just make sure you're talking to your kid and relating. If there's already distance between you and your kid, you can't really have that connection. You're not close with them. You're not going to be able to ensure safety. I'm sorry. I mean, so it just really, care, take that time, even though life is stressful, take the time to look at them and just tell the teacher, yeah, look, I know people that have been abused in these programs, but I don't want to miss the opportunity. So I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but can I know a little more? Can I, keep an eye on this? And if they say no, again, well, then that's your answer. Then you don't need to be associated with that. And I do realize it's going to be very hard in the public school systems. Parents are handled, all that's not a perfect world. Again, at this day and age, I personally would recommend homeschooling if it's feasible. Again, that's very hard, but it's a culture change that needs to happen. So there's a lot going on, but change is coming right now, and it's rapid, and people are helping. So, so it's all going to be good. Thanks everybody for the time. And if y'all have information, I'm thinking we might make like a Google drop down or something. If we don't need people's information, but if there was like an anonymous, survey that's like a age, what type of program was it? GATE? Was it AIM? Was it TAG? Blah, blah, blah. Been through something, boom, something like that, just to get kind of a little survey or something. That would be interesting. Obviously I'm kind of concentrating on the other thing, and we already have a lot of information about these programs that I can't disclose because it would compromise investigation. But yeah, I don't know. We'll figure out something. But we got to come together, and we can stop this. The thing is, we will be able to collectively stop this a lot faster than what's been happening, because in the past, we haven't been trying to stop it. We have been reporting to compromised authorities and oversight. And they were never going to stop it. That was never their desire. So it was never going to happen. So now we do, so we'll get it done. It will happen rather quickly. I'm actually quite confident, especially with the people working in the background. And there are a lot of good people in the government at this point that do know. There is a lot being changed. There is a lot being changed. The important part was for good people to come together and be organized, because this evil is working cohesively in an organized manner. And for so long, they were working in an organized manner against random, unwitting people. So now that we're aware of the situation, we can address it directly with people that actually intend to stop it, not people that are literally running interference or compromised or enable.
100%. That was a great answer, by the way. And I just wanted to add to you one more thing. Ask your child about their day. See if they remember. That's a huge red flag if they're like, oh, I don't know what I did today. That's showing that your child is dissociating, and we know what causes that. So communicate with your child too. They're probably going to tell you a lot more than their teachers.
Another thing is, and unfortunately, by the time they're in these programs, I mean, I understand it can be in kindergarten and stuff like that, but unfortunately, children need to be aware that there are some people out there that prey on children, and be prepared. You don't need to scare them, but also as long as this child is prepared, hey, if someone does this, if there's ever anybody, I mean, I'll be honest, I don't know what the exact talk is, but like if someone's touching you, that's a no. You know what I'm saying? No one can touch your privates. If someone's making you do this, if you feel uncomfortable, I know you have to listen to your teacher, but sometimes teachers can be wrong too. you know, blah, 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 blah. Come up with the no-nonsense talk and make sure that they know what abuse is. And if there's ever any inkling of it, that they do feel comfortable, and let them know, hey, we know people that were abused, you know. And I'm not going to tell you to say a white lie if you didn't have a real excuse or something, but you need to create a situation where they are comfortable and don't feel shamed to come forward, because there already is so much shame and stuff like that. And just that they're educated to know about it. Because if the child knows about it, they're going to be a lot less susceptible to it. But yeah, if they don't remember, obviously we have a red flag. Now, you know, and there's a difference between if they don't remember, they don't care. But
yes. And hopefully if you know your child, you know the difference between those two and can assess properly.
Absolutely.
But, Gray, tell us about a little bit about your new podcast. Tell us where we can find you on social media. How can people get in touch with you?
All right. So you know, I got the Gray Area podcast. I'm just ranting. It's pretty dark. It gets crucial. You know, it's long. So that's on YouTube and Rumble, the Gray Area on YouTube. I don't know. Those links will be in there. You know, I'm on Twitter. I don't do too much on Reddit. I'm going to get on all these platforms soon. I'm trying to link them all up with like a all-in-one where I can post one and it goes everywhere. And then pretty soon Organized Safety version 2 is coming out, which is where people can completely anonymously report. We've already been doing this over a decade. In 2008, I defected with a database of programming sites for children and other things. Then I took other strategies, such as in Nashville, went to every single therapist and basically told them the deal, what's going on. Instantly got linked up with many people like me. We put together and found out a very good picture of the infrastructure in Nashville and so on and so forth. We've been building that behind the scenes nationwide, worldwide, but mostly nationwide, and addressing that. So Organized Safety V2 is now where we're actually going to create a public, is where we get a public outreach where people can just, you know, leave the information. And then if they want to contact back, if information is corroborated, then at that point, they will, you know, can get contacted back. But it's completely anonymous. You don't have to say your name. But guess what? Everybody writes, hey, this person was an abuser, did this in this location around this time, and, you know, fill in as much information as you can. And then just leave an email or something, or whatever number, whatever you're comfortable with, if you want to get contacted back, if 2 people mention them, if 5 people mention them, if 10 people mention them. If 10 people mention the same name, look, we're not jumping to any conclusions and doing anything rash, but you can bet that person's an abuser and something needs to happen. And if there's blindly corroborating information, oh, let me tell you, the civil lawyer's wet dream right there. They're going to jump on it. You see what's going on even about like Epstein and stuff like that. But a lot of that wasn't blindly information, and it was already publicly hit. So it was easier for people to lie about it. It's questionable. If you have 10 random people that didn't know each other, that named the same person, it is a slam dunk. And then beyond that, there's a lot of other things we can do. There's only so much. I need to vet information before I put it out, because I don't want to compromise our investigative methods. But yeah, we're about to launch Organized Safety V2 to where people can report and build on this database and everything. I'm already in touch with SSCI, House Oversight Committee, many bureaucrats. I don't trust anybody, but I am diligent and take time and steps. They don't get the lists of people, don't worry, because I'm not fucking stupid. And also, I don't want them to compromise investigations, but, you know, they definitely wouldn't get a list of survivors, let me tell you. But it's just, you know, we're putting it together really properly. I have this being developed by some serious professionals, compartmentalized in different aspects. It can't be tainted. You know, nothing's going to be online to get hacked. It's very smartly set up, and pretty soon I will go over the overview of exactly how that was put together, because people are like, oh, you know, that sounds really risky. Oh, that sounds dangerous. I've been doing it for 10 years. I've never had a problem. I had a problem personally when I did rash things, you know. But as far as the collecting data and then addressing it properly, no, I'm set up. We're good. I'm also in touch with literally the proper channels in the government as well, and they know this is happening as well. You know, they don't, again, they're not privy to the information because I don't trust anybody, but like, this is going to handle the problem, because guess what? Like, don't make me name off Nazar, Sandusky, FBI, you know, Epstein. Like, obviously no one's been doing anything. We've done a lot. I can't claim what we've done, you know, it's a lot. We've shut down a lot. In 2014, I was having senators step down and literally senators' family that was running early childhood development centers getting fired and things like that. One thing I will say we were doing was we had a list of some of these places, and we would get the email list for the parents, and then we anonymously emailed every parent that was on the thing, which it was like almost all of them, I think. But then and wrote, it's an anonymous parent saying, hey, I'm concerned, my child essentially was abused, right? Like we'd make different things, like come up with scenarios depending on who, and we would know the teachers. And only when we were 100% certain that there was abuse going on at these places. And then in several of them, but one specifically, for example, the senators people, a lot of parents came forward with similar things after we had created the one, and then the people ended up getting fired. And then, they took I will say this place, they took the Childhood Development Center away from Nashville Christian School in Nashville, Tennessee. They took it away and moved it to West Point Church, which is literally next door to it. So they literally just like shuffled it. That was, again, 2014. A lot's happened since then. But it's relatively easy when you have a bunch of people come together that actually want to stop it. If information is reported in the right manner, it's actually relatively easy to stop stuff, believe it or not. It just doesn't seem like that because of how it's been going about. And I can't believe that nobody else has been doing this. I'm extremely inconvenienced that I had to lead this initiative because I have paid dearly, but I was also coming from a really dark place, where unfortunately there was degrees of me unwittingly participating. So I'd feel that that was almost karmic retribution what I've went through. Whatever, here we are. There's people better than me behind me. They just don't want to be talking on the internet and are actually in some official positions and a little bit more risky. I've already been exposed publicly. I don't want to be exposed now, but I was speaking out very loudly in 2008 to 2014. I've just been mostly quiet since then because, it got serious. So anyways, I talk fast and rant. I think that's pretty much wraps it up.
You did amazing. You crushed that presentation in this podcast. Thank you so much. I know this is going to be one of the most educational episodes we've done just because everybody's familiar with this. This is something that has crossed everybody's path, whether or not they went through it. They had friends that did, maybe a sibling did, so, and I think too, this will probably elicit a lot of people remembering things that maybe they didn't think about until they listened to you. So I just want to thank you for all your work. We see what you're doing behind the scenes, those of us in the community that support you. You're one of the biggest supporters of all survivors, and I can vouch for that. You've been one of the hugest supporters of this podcast. I see what you're doing behind the scenes and people that follow you do, and I'm really excited to see where your podcasting journey goes, where everything new goes that you're creating, and I'm really excited for this new project with Organized Safety, the new version to come out. We'll have to bring you back on so you can really talk about that and explain to people how they can contact you and how the platform works and, really get that moving. So I just want to thank you so much, Gray, for coming on again today. It's awesome having you, and I can't wait for you to come back.
Thank you so much, Emma, for everything you do.
Absolutely. And you guys, please go follow Gray. He's on literally almost every platform. I will link it all below so you guys can go connect with his new podcast. You can go support his Substack. You can go follow him on Twitter. You guys need to go follow him. We need eyes on all these guests. I know I say that all the time, but that's a really big security for them. And it's also telling any enemies that, hey, we're watching these people, so be careful. You guys are the ones that need to be careful, not them. So we need to really deliver that message. So please go follow Gray.
Stronger together.
Yeah, we need to come together. Like Gray said, nobody's going to save us but us. So let's all join hands and move mountains together. Let's shake the Luciferian kingdom. So go support Gray. Go directly to these guests. It's so much more productive than supporting some of these nonprofits. I would say, almost every nonprofit. Go right to the source. Go support survivors, whistleblowers, and people trying to actually save the children with boots on the ground. So I'll have all that below. I will have all of our links below also. I can't thank you guys enough for supporting us. So thankful you guys listen to this episode. Again, leave some comments below. Reach out to Gray privately if you want to share some information. You guys have my email address and information below also. Thank you guys so much for listening this week. God bless you, and we will see you next week.